to rig the lottery for Toronto.
Who gets the first pick of the draft?
12.
Wow. Number 12.
Because if they don't win the lottery, they're going to be moved out of the lottery, and then they lose their pick. They lose Austin Matthews, and Bettman's like, what? Somebody in the Canadian market is going to win this lottery.
The Toronto Maple Leafs have won the NHL draft lottery, and Matt Sundin is smiling ear to ear.
I'd say if it's rigged, the Toronto Maple Leafs will be a first overall pick.
It's rigged. That's what my takeaway was from last night. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Toronto wins the number 1 overall selection. San Jose will be selecting 2nd overall. Alex, that's what it sounded like last night on Sportsnet up in Canada. I think I already know what your takeaway is. The Blues, by the way, they're sticking at number 11 and number 15. What did you take away from the lottery last night?
The draft is rigged, ladies and gentlemen.
No. The draft lottery.
Sorry. The draft lottery is rigged. That's what this one is. I mean, you heard the evil laugh when Buccigross was acting as if he was surprised. I couldn't believe the number 12 came up on these weighted ping pong balls. Like, it's rigged. Let's all know this. But in terms of the Blues side of this was the second best case scenario that could happen for you. You didn't get the first or second overall pick. That was the best case scenario. But the second best was 1, you didn't move out of a spot, and 2, there's some teams that you can make deals with. But for the Blues, it sucks that you didn't win the lottery. I was watching it. I was hoping that first pick, you saw the percentage go up after the first 2 balls. I'm like, oh, man, there you go. And then, of course, the third one, and it just kicked the Blues out. But them's the ropes when the Toronto Maple Leafs need a superstar player to keep Austin Matthews, to make their con artist look not like a con artist, keep the biggest market in Canada alive and well. So it makes a lot of sense that the NFL draft, the ping pong's bounced in their direction. It's rigged like it is every year.
NHL, not NFL, but neither here nor there.
He's still fired up, man. Let him cook.
I still don't believe it's rigged, but this certainly didn't help the allegations. The whole Toronto thing, them bumping up, and then we said, like, hey, San Jose's another team that it wouldn't hurt if they get one of these top players in the draft and they go up to number 2.
Go piece by piece. The Blackhawks got when Bedard was available. It's a big market there. Remember when the Rangers were supposed to select like 10 and they moved up to the top spot for Alexis Lafreniere? It's always about the big markets.
We did say if it was rigged, they would help Seattle. And, well, they knocked Seattle down a spot.
I said it could be Seattle. Toronto was the obvious one.
Yeah, Seattle's also just, like, they're still fresh. They've got a good fan base up there. They don't need to do that just yet.
Also, Gary doesn't like Calgary, and where did Calgary fall, guys?
Yep, fell 2 spots.
The second worst team in the NHL.
In Vancouver, they fell a couple of spots as well. It's interesting, man. I've seen some of these mock drafts come out in the last 12 hours, I guess, since the lottery has been ultimately determined. And I thought it was a clear-cut 1-2 of McKenna and Stenberg. What happened to that? Because it feels like half of the mock drafts that I'm seeing don't have Stenberg going in the top 3, much less the top 2. McKenna seems to be a clear-cut. Everybody's got him going number 1 overall. I think Gavin McKenna is going to be a Toronto Maple Leaf if I had to guess. But, Alex, is it now the tiers, if you wanted to tier them out? I thought it was 2 players at the top, and now it seems like there's 1 and then a group of like 3 or 4 in that second tier. Well, is that what you're sensing as well?
No, I still think the tier is McKenna and Stenberg. I think it's situational for some of these teams. Like San Jose picking second, the reason I believe that their mock drafts have gone this direction is because, yes, you take the best player available, but the best defenseman is kind of close to the same tier as Ivar Stenberg. And if you look at where the San Jose Sharks are at in terms of just their lifespan, they need help on the defensive side. Like, they're good in the top 6 with Celebrini and Smith and Eklund and Chernisov. Like, they're good. They need help on the defensive side. And then when you go to Vancouver, how do you build teams? You build it from the middle position, center, defense, and goaltending. They need help center. And Caleb Malhotra is starting to skyrocket towards the top. So that's why I think Ivar Stenberg is starting to shift down, because you've got 2 teams that pick right after Toronto that, yes, you want the best player, but the best player also is kind of situational for the position that they're looking for.
Interesting. If you're curious, say, what does this all mean for the Blues? What kind of player should I be expecting for them to take in the 11 to 15 range, where they now have 2 selections, if they don't end up moving up or down from their current slots? There have been a few different mock drafts that have been released today. 3 of them that are maybe most prominent. The Athletic put one together, which included their beat writers. Sportsnet put one out, and Craig Button, who we love here on the show of TSN, also put his out earlier today. The Athletic had them going Viggo Bjork.
Yep. Swedish, which shouldn't surprise anyone.
They also have them taking left-handed defenseman Malte Gustafsson.
Another Swede.
Sportsnet had them going with a left-handed defenseman at 11, Albert Smits, who we talked about yesterday, and then a left winger, J.P. Hubert at number 15, Holbert. And Craig Button had them going with left winger Ethan Beckets,
yeah.
And left-handed defenseman, once again, Malte Gustafsson.
Yeah,
So some similar names in the conversation. A lot of defensemen potentially available for you there.
And really this comes down to just how teams decide to go. Like, I think there's a chance there's another center, Tynan Lawrence, that he could drop to you. Daxon Rudolph is a defenseman that can move to you. But there's some guys that are probably below the 11th pick that this is where your scouting department comes into play. We mentioned a Nikita Klipov, who's going to college next year, who just dominated juniors. This is a guy that's not slated to go to like 15 or 16, who could be a top 10 talent. Adam Novotny's another one. So I hope we can get a prospect analyst on with us either tomorrow or Friday. I've reached out to Craig Button as well. There's going to be, this is the part that I got into a little bit of an argument on Twitter last night, T-Bone. It happened again.
I saw
this was going to be my follow-up question for you.
I know people get mad when I say picking 6th versus 11th isn't that much of a difference. It is if the draft is top-heavy. This draft is not top-heavy. This draft is 2 guys and then a slew of guys that are in that second tier that I think you're getting the very close comparison in terms of their ceilings. So, yes, it would have been great to have the 6th overall pick, but you finished with the same percentage points as the San Jose Sharks to get a top 2 pick, and San Jose got it. Calgary, who finished with one of the worst records in the NHL, drops to the 6th overall pick. I think picking at 11 is still a great spot to be in because the players you're going to be selecting kind of have the same ceiling as what you would be getting at 6 or 7.
That's the thing to me is that I'm no expert on the NHL draft, man, and we're going to talk to Doug Armstrong, who's going to be an expert on this momentarily. He'll join us coming up here in about 5 minutes on BK and Ferrario. Tell all your friends. Blues president of hockey operations and general manager for at least the next 2 months. Doug Armstrong joining us in just a little bit. Based upon all of the stuff that I've been reading from people that do know more about this than we do, and I'll really say than I do, because Alex knows a hell of a lot more than I do.
If I just go by what these experts are saying.
They seem to be suggesting, and I'm going to go ahead and make the switch. I think it's a tier of 1 at the top. And then there's like 3 others that are in tier 2. And then if you're picking like 5 to 13, that's a tier. And then after that, there's another drop where you get a slightly different group of players that you're going to be selecting from. But I do think there's a different group from 11 to 15. I don't get that sense from 11 to 6.
Yeah.
Like the Blues are selecting from a different tier at their pick than they are in the Red Wings pick. And I think the Blues are selecting in a very similar group of players to Calgary, who's selecting at 6th overall today. So is it the biggest deal in the world? No. Would you have preferred to be where the San Jose Sharks are, where they're picking 2nd now? Yeah, of course. But you didn't know going in that the Sharks were going to be able to get that pick. They had a 5% chance to move up. You had a 3% chance to move up. Whatever. It is what it is. The Blues are in a pretty good spot to be able to select a significant piece for their future. We'll talk about them potentially moving up as we go along here today on BK and Ferrario. If you guys want to get involved in the show, the way to do so is 314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line. Also, check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Coming up in the 12 o'clock hour, we'll be joined by Voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. Theo Lindstein expected to join us at some point in the 1 o'clock hour today. But coming up next, we're going to be joined by Blues President of Hockey Operations and General Manager Doug Armstrong here on BK and Ferrario.
Alongside Brandon Kiley and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Alex Ferrario as we now head to our Collier and Thompson hotline to welcome in the Blues president of hockey operations and general manager, Doug Armstrong, the day following the draft lottery where the Blues will pick 11th and 15th overall. Doug, as always, we appreciate you taking your time out of a busy schedule to hop on with us today. Have you grown to start hating ping pong balls more and more as these lotteries continue to go on?
Yeah, well, I wish we weren't in them, so.
That's fair.
But our goal is not to worry about these moving forward, that's for sure.
So, Doug, just the initial reaction when you see that the picks stay where they're at. Obviously, best case scenario would have been winning the lottery for the first or second overall pick. But from your team's perspective, it seems this draft is a good spot to be in, even if you are picking at 11.
Yeah, we're excited. Obviously, you'd like to move up, but you're realistic on the odds that you have going into it. So we've prepared, where we were at the end of the season. We scouted those top players pretty well because we weren't sure where we were going to finish. So we now have the ability with solid information to use those picks to move up if we wish to make those selections. So we have. Having the 3 first-rounders, the 2 in that area of 11 and 15, and the later one will give us some options to move around in. And, we have a good group of prospects and players that if we need to dip into that pool to get better, we can do that also. So it'll be an interesting 6 weeks for sure.
Doug, you don't often see trades at that portion of the draft, that high, but you also don't often see teams like Toronto and San Jose, who are potential playoff contenders as soon as next year, picking that high in the draft. Do you have any sense right now on the likelihood of being able to move up into the top 3 or 5 at this point in the offseason?
Yeah, just looking at the the mock drafts and the people around the NHL that aren't associated with teams but do mock drafts. The one thing is you probably have any 4 players that people have going first overall. So it's not a Celebrini, a Connor McDavid, a Crosby draft where there's one player that's dominant. So I think when you have that the number of players that could go one, you could see movement from those teams to move back a few slots. And what we have is the ability to package things to move up. So I actually think there could be some movement just from what you said, teams that might want more of an impact player today, but also the ability to move around. And, you look at a team like the Florida Panthers that are, Stanley Cup finals, Stanley Cup champs, missed the playoffs this year with a lot of injuries. Their window is still wide open, so they're going to have opportunity to do things. So I think it's going to be a very interesting 6 weeks, like I said.
Doug, in the NFL, there's an NFL draft trade value chart that is available publicly, and you can kind of look at how the points match up, and it's easy as a fan to be able to follow along and see how trades can get constructed. Is there something similar that you use in the NHL when it comes to the draft?
Yeah, there is. We have a just as you just said, it's 1,000 points, and number one has the most amount of points, obviously, and you move around. So our chart says we could use an 11, 15 to get up into the top 5. When you're not picking there, you look and see, geez, not many guys move out of that area. But there are charts now. Whether those charts work into reality or not is a different question. But we try and use that. I find it very helpful when you're moving. Let's say a later first and a third. How high can you go up? Could that pick you up 3 slots, 4 slots? And it's obviously dependent on the team you're dealing with. If there's a player there that they like, but yeah, there is a formula that we try and use to make sure we're getting value for our moves up, or we're not undervaluing if we move back.
We're talking with Blues president of hockey operations, Doug Armstrong, with us here on BK and Ferrario. Doug, you've talked so much about the asset accumulation over these last few years, and with so many picks in this year's draft, I am curious. Montreal did this last year to where they traded 2 first-round picks to go get Noah Dobson to help them right away. Is that something kind of in the lifespan of where the team is at right now that's appetizing of trading those picks to get NHL help right now?
I think that has to be certainly in the equation when Alex and I sit down with our group. If you look at that, though, they did sign Dobson to a long-term extension. So I don't want to. I guess there's no guarantees, but I would be shocked if we move these picks for players that didn't have 5, 6, 7, 8 years left on their deals. We're not in a position now where we would move these players for a 1 or 2 year look at somebody and hope we can sign them. I think that we're not in that position as an organization. But yeah, we would not be against moving picks for players that we could see growing with for the next, as I said, 5+ years.
Doug, there was news today for all of us on the outside that Jiricek and Carbonneau are going to be joining the Springfield Thunderbirds as they continue their playoff push here. They got a win last night in overtime against Providence. What kind of value can this have for young players like Jiricek and Carbonneau to get that experience in the postseason with the AHL? And I guess as a follow-up to that, is that the plan that they'll be on the ice with the Thunderbirds in this next game?
Well, we're going to let Steve Ott decide that. With the travel, they're coming from distance. They just both lost emotional game 7s. So we want to make sure we're putting them in position to succeed. Also, you want to be respectful for the work that group has done. But if you follow the Springfield Chiefs right now, they are banged up something fierce. So I think just having fresh bodies come in is going to be helpful for them. But I think it's going to be a great experience, whether they get on the ice in this series, whether they get on Thursday or if it goes 5 games, it goes 5 games or the next round. But being around that is going to be a very positive thing for them. Unlike a college player they play those one and done tournaments, these guys have now come off multiple rounds of playoffs, so they're accustomed to the grind that these guys are going to go through. Obviously, the tempo, the speed, the skill level is much higher than it is where they're coming from. But these are top players in their age bracket, and I think they're going to be able to go in and if Steve gives them that opportunity, they're going to be able to help our team right away.
Doug, obviously, we don't know what happens with the future, but how beneficial is it to have a guy like Steve Ott for all of these young guys in the American Hockey League, just learning Blues hockey from him?
Yeah, he's done a fabulous job. Obviously, going in mid-seasons, it's always difficult, and getting us into the playoff picture and then winning that play-in round, and now being in this, it's just it's been excellent. But more importantly, he's laying the foundation for younger players. He and I talked the other morning about messaging and that we're into the marathon with these people. Even though we're in a 5-game series, we still want to approach it like we're in the marathon, and they can learn lessons that are going to help them not only in the next game, but just a vision on what they want to do in that game to set them up for their NHL career. So, and Steve's got a great opportunity to share his experience as a player that played in the American Hockey League years ago, to an NHL player, to a coach. So I think they're eyes wide open, ears wide open. His message is excellent, and he's delivering it well, and everyone's benefiting.
Doug, I know you're limited on time, so we'll get you out of here on this one. You guys were able to announce the Dylan Holloway contract extension. He was getting ready to be in that RFA status. You also have Neighbors and Snuggie, Mayu, Hofer. Is the plan to get anybody else that is entering that RFA status locked into long-term contracts sooner rather than later?
Well, Dylan's contract was up, so that one, we had to get that one done, or he wouldn't be at training camp. Everybody else is now signed. So the beautiful thing about my life now, I'll pass it on to Alex, and he can make that decision. I've laughed though. His summer, his 26 summer is going to be a lot less anxious than his 27 summer. I guarantee that, with all those contracts coming up. But we'll worry about that then. It's going to be a great opportunity for the guys to have a good year, and we're excited about the growth of our team, and we're excited about moving forward, and I'm looking forward to you guys having great years, and we'll take care of them financially when the time comes.
I got to be believing that Alex Steen is getting a little antsy for that to get right here right now too, Doug.
He's looking forward to it.
Doug, we really appreciate the time. I know a busy schedule right now with the offseason getting into high gear, so thanks so much for taking some time out, hopping on, and we'll talk with you again soon.
Always enjoy it, guys. Thank you very much.
There you go. Doug Armstrong with us on the Callier and Thompson hotline.
Appreciate Army joining us here on BK and Ferrario. I asked that question quickly. I should have phrased it better, but it is what it is. Those guys all are. Holloway had RFA status this offseason. Those guys are all hitting RFA status next offseason, but they are eligible for extensions this offseason. That's the way that I would have phrased it had we had a little bit more time to get in with Army, but we were under the gun. All right, a lot to get into with that, Alex, and let's go ahead and dive into some of this here. He mentioned 11 and 15 gets you potentially into the top 5.
Yeah.
Based upon their trade calculations, the way that the value works for these draft picks. Is that something you'd be interested in? We'll talk about this more, bigger coming up at 12 o'clock, but now that we know kind of how their math would work internally, is that something you would be interested in?
Yeah, I absolutely would. And I don't know about you, but just hearing him talk, he sounded just very confident on the fact that, we're going to be aggressive to look to move into that top 5 with these picks. And I would. Now, the thing about it is, I think there's only 3 teams that you can target. I don't think Toronto's trading theirs, and I don't think Vancouver's trading theirs. So that means you've got Chicago, San Jose, and New York.
Are we sure on Toronto?
You know, I asked that same question to JR on the podcast, and JR seems pretty definitive, yes. And it's mostly because, they need that youthful injection, and Gavin McKenna is a Canadian forward. And I have to imagine...
So is Jordan Kyrou. I'm being serious.
I think if you were to ask them, they'd rather take the Gavin McKenna in terms of control and the age versus a Jordan Kyrou.
The money definitely plays into this. But that's a huge aspect.
I brought up the Toronto thing because I had the same thought. If I'm Toronto, I need help now.
Right. I
don't need help because, at least with Gavin McKenna, the belief is it's probably going to be a year of learning, and then he gets to that next level.
The comparison that I just saw from somebody is, hey, he's kind of similar to Connor Bedard, but a year behind developmentally in terms of his physicality.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Connor Bedard took a year to develop physically. So does that mean that it's going to take 2 years physically for Gavin McKenna to become the player that you ultimately want him to be, which is fine, by the way. That doesn't mean he's going to be a bust or anything like that. He may be special. Toronto ain't got 2 years.
Yeah.
They need you to be ready today. They need a ready-made player to get them to the playoffs and then through the playoffs. Otherwise, that fan base is ready to revolt
I think
against this organization.
If I'm Toronto, and this guy's a con artist, as we all know by now, so who knows how he's thinking.
Allegedly.
But if I'm Toronto, and let's go down the hypothetical path, because as a general manager, you have to think worst-case scenario. Let's say that Austin Matthews says, I want out and I'm not going to be here. Would you rather have a Gavin McKenna to try and sell to your fans or a Jordan Kyrou? And I think they would rather have a Gavin McKenna who's 22 years old, who looks like he's got that star-level status, versus a Jordan Kyrou who, as we've seen in St. Louis, you need good players around him to get him to that level.
No doubt. They have good players, though.
For now. I don't know if they're going to when Austin Matthews leaves. They don't have a centerman.
Does it make it more likely for you to be able to keep those players with Jordan Kyrou? Or with Gavin McKenna?
I would say Gavin McKenna.
If you're Austin Matthews, do I need a dude that can score 30 this year, or do I need a dude that can score 30 3 years from now when I'm not currently under contract?
You're right, but if I'm Austin Matthews, I just want the best talent available, and I think Gavin McKenna is that. There's a chance. I would say it's a very slim chance. That's why I think San Jose... Maybe Chicago, but you'd probably have to pay more than you'd want to because it's an in-division team, and then you've got the Rangers.
They're a team that whatever. If it's going to take a couple of years.
And the Rangers one isn't that crazy to trade for because there's a chance that Ivar Stenberg, if that's who you want as a Blues fan, because here's the thing. If I'm trading up, I need a forward. I'm not trading up to get a defenseman because I think the defenseman in this draft, now I could be talking out my mouth and they could draft a defenseman, but I think a defenseman in this draft you could get at the 11 spot and still be okay with.
Great point.
I think you need to get Ivar Stenberg. And this comes with the conversation.
So that was going to be my follow-up real quick. Is it Stenberg, McKenna, and Malhotra? Those are the 3 guys that you would potentially be targeting to trade up. Is there any defenseman that you look at or that people look at right now and say, that guy's different. He could come in and play for you almost immediately and be a contributor right away. And that's a different tier than maybe some of the guys that you'd potentially be able to take at 11 or 15.
So there's a defenseman, Chase Reed, who just played in the OHL, who had 18 goals and 48 points and was a plus 27 in 45 games, who's 6'3", 195 pounds. He's one that was compared to Zach Werenski.
And he could come in quicker?
I don't know if he's here next year. I think he's actually committed in college, so you're probably looking at a year away, and then you're talking about it. I don't know what... if I'm the Blues, I look at my defense right now and I say Broberg, Juracek, Lindstein, Mayu. I got my top 4, and then you've got other pieces.
Hey, man, if you can get another one, that's a stud.
Yeah. And this is a right-shot defenseman, too, that I think is very important. So, yeah, there's a chance that they draft this, but the Blues are lacking, and this is what Doug told us on the Last Minute Blues podcast. He thinks they're deficient in the center position. So I think Stenberg's probably the primary target, but Caleb Malhotra wouldn't be that far off because this guy's got number 1 center upside that you'd put into your team right away. So that's why I look at it. I think you're looking at 2 spots. You're hoping San Jose and the Rangers. And what's interesting with the Rangers is this is the GM work to where you start talking to teams and be like, look, we want to make a deal. Where are you at in terms of draft? Because if San Jose says we're taking Stenberg no matter what, then you have to trade with San Jose. But if San Jose is like, yeah, we're leaning defenseman, and you think Stenberg falls to 5, then you can make the deal with the Rangers. So I think they're going to be aggressive just hearing Doug talk.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. If you missed any of our conversation with Doug Armstrong, president of Hockey Operations, you can check that out on the podcast page after the show today at 101ESPN.com or the free 101 ESPN app. Those podcasts are sponsored by
Schaefer Door Company.
Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get into questions and answers. 314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line. But next, the Cardinals are making a surprising decision today behind the plate. Is it a sign of something more meaningful, or is this a true one-off? We'll get into that next here on BK and Ferrario.
Tanner Hendrickson here, the Sports Center update brought to you by Universal Windows Direct. The Cardinals back in action later on this afternoon. 12:15 will be first pitch. Andre Plante will be on the mound as the Cardinals take on the Milwaukee Brewers. And last night was the NHL Draft Lottery. Blues picks stay the same. They will be drafting at number 11 and 15 from the lottery picks from last night. The Sports Update is brought to you by Universal Windows Direct. You'll be saying, I love my windows.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, the Cardinals made an interesting choice with their lineup today. They are going with a new catcher behind the plate with Andre Plante on the mound.
Pozo?
Typically, this is a spot where you would expect to see Ivan Herrera as your catcher. Instead, they're going Pedro Pages today. So I reached out to Ollie this morning to find out, is there something we should read into this? Or is this just a one-off and, hey, you're going up against a team that is among the top 3 in Major League Baseball in stolen bases this season? They have a lot of speed, and you've got a ground ball pitcher on the mound. Is this a scenario where you want your best defensive catcher behind the plate for today, and yesterday's off day allowed for that? He said it's that. They just want to make sure they've got this guy behind the plate. It's an opportunity that they did not expect to have because of the off day. So go ahead and put him back there. But typically they're going to go back to Ivan Herrera with Andre Plante and with Michael McGreevy. Alex, do you trust that? Or do you think there's something more here?
No, I kind of trust that. Even though it's felt like, at least for me, that Ivan Herrera hasn't been horrible behind the plate. Milwaukee is a team that's aggressive on the base paths, and I think you're probably looking at this as you want to get the series win and you want to pick this one up. So, yeah, I kind of do buy into that they're looking at this as like, look, we just want to make sure that this one's tight. Plante, of course, has had his ups and downs. We want to make sure that defensively we're as secure as possible to try and pull out the win in this series. And we'll just look at it as an extra day for Ivan Herrera. Got the bat still. Don't worry about the defense. Gets himself ready for the next couple of games.
I'll buy it for now, but I have my antennas up on moving forward with what they decide to do, because if you look at Herrera's numbers, I mean, he doesn't really grade out well on anything behind the plate, right? He doesn't catch anybody. I mean, literally anybody. He's 0 for 8 on trying to catch base stealers so far this season. His blocking doesn't grade well based on Baseball Savant, and neither does his framing. Now, I don't know how important framing is anymore with the ABS system because he's very good at that. But the reason I bring that up is because I don't know. Right now, I would argue the 2 most valuable things a catcher will bring behind the plate is blocking and then also catching base runners. They would argue also game calling. That's just something we can't grade from the outside. They seem to think he's doing a pretty good job of that. But if he can't catch base runners, I'm surprised we haven't seen teams try to run all over him when he's behind the plate so far this year. And I don't know if that's because they're not getting on base against McGreevy and Plante. I don't know if that's because McGreevy and Plante are the quickest on the staff when there's runners.
Plante very much is not.
I wouldn't think so, because when you watch him, he feels like he's slow to the plate. So it's just something I'm going to be monitoring because it is the first time that we've seen this. And you know what? If they get back to this rotation in San Diego and in Sacramento with the A's, then you know what? Yeah, this is what it was. It was just an off day to play it out. But the stats would tell you, hey, okay, Herrera hasn't really fixed his issue of throwing runners out, and we just haven't seen teams take advantage of it yet.
So I agree with you on that. Stats would tell you that. I'm going to ask you guys a follow-up question to it, though. As you're watching the games, let's assume you could not see any of these statistics. You didn't see the Baseball Savant page. You didn't see anything else. Watching the games, do you feel like Herrera has been a liability defensively this year?
I don't.
I don't either. I think he's been fine.
I think Contreras was more of a liability behind the plate that was noticeable versus Ivan Herrera.
I think Herrera was very noticeable last year behind the plate as a negative.
I agree.
Because teams were really running on him.
I'm talking about this year.
This year, I haven't felt it as much.
I haven't really felt like he's an issue.
But again, I don't understand why teams aren't running on him more. That would be kind of my counter to that.
Who cares?
I don't know, and I don't care. I'm with Alex. Like, until it becomes an issue, it's not an issue. And today, like, I do think Pages is a better defensive catcher behind the plate. And so if you have this opportunity against the Milwaukee Brewers, an intra-divisional opponent, and you have a chance to go up 2-0 on them in the season series, and you've got Andre Plante on the mound, who's a severe ground ball pitcher, so instead of having that guy get over to second on his own, you continue to have him in a potential double play situation, I think you might as well go ahead and do it. right? So I've got no issue with them doing this today. You also don't have the opportunity to put Ramon Urias in the lineup today to help you defensively like you have been in the past, where you put Gorman at DH and Urias at third base. So, yeah, go ahead and take this opportunity. Put your best defensive catcher behind the plate. You still have Ivan Herrera in the lineup. I'm cool with them doing this. I think it makes a ton of sense to do so. And I don't get the sense that this is something they're going to continue doing long term. And nor do I think they should do this long term. I think Herrera has been fine so far this year defensively. And given what he does offensively for you and what it opens up for you, if he's able to be a capable defensive catcher, you should continue to go about this experiment with him behind the plate, in my opinion.
Well, and I think you also take advantage of not having a game yesterday. And it's like, look, we didn't expect to have a day off. We got one. And you have him at DH, so he's off of his feet twice before we continue this stretch of no days off in baseball. So I think that's also very smart for a guy like Ivan Herrera, who all offseason we were talking about, you were worried about him staying healthy when he's playing the catching position. So I just think this is one of those situationals that it makes sense. I'm with T-Bone. Like, I think any decisions you put your antennas up, especially for one that we were curious how long it was going to last. But before I start to get conspiracy theory on this, I need to see it happen 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I will be curious on Friday what the lineup looks like, because they've got Michael McGreevy on the mound. San Diego is a team that has been stealing a lot of bases. My assumption would be they go to Ivan Herrera in that game. That'll be an opportunity for us to find out with him behind the plate, T-Bone, and to learn, all right, what does this look like while you're on the road at San Diego? And I bet you we see Cesar Prieto. That might be his first real opportunity to get a chance to get into the lineup, potentially as your designated hitter that day, because you now no longer have Ramon Urias, who's an option for you. And as a lefty bat, you've got a lot of righties coming up, man. You might see him get some opportunities over the next couple of series while Urias is out. They said this is going to be a couple-week thing, potentially at a minimum, with him dealing with, I think it's basically like tennis elbow from overuse, from throwing and stuff. So if you end up getting an opportunity over the course of the next week or two to see what Cesar Prieto can provide for you, I think he's going to get some real chances here. And based on the way that his bat was playing down at AAA, I'm curious to see what he can do. He could cement himself as a really solid bench option for the team over the next couple of weeks.
I mean, he could really potentially even take the role of Thomas Saggese / Urias when Urias comes back, you know, because it depends on what Saggese does as well now that he's back on the Major League roster.
Nothing.
Yeah. I didn't really know what the role was going to be with him when they had Urias, because we know how well they like Urias, and I truly believe they were going to go Urias as the third base option to relieve Gorman, and then it was, okay, well, how do you find at-bats for Prieto outside of maybe pinch hit opportunities? But now that Urias is on the IL, I'm with you. Like, I mean, you look at the lineup yesterday. I know they didn't play. They released their lineup, and it kind of gave you a tell as to what they are going to do potentially. Herrera was behind the plate originally. Gorman was the DH, and Prieto was the third baseman. Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of what you're going to see. So Friday, to your point, when we are supposed to, in theory, see Ivan Herrera behind home plate, I think it's going to look similar to that, where he's going to get that opportunity to start at third base because they rather would have him at third and Gorman be the designated hitter.
And my guess is you would have seen maybe Saturday or Sunday, probably Saturday with Dustin May on the mound. My guess is you probably would have seen Mason Wynn get a day off and get him off of his feet, put Cesar Prieto in at shortstop on that day, going up against a right-handed pitcher. So that way you've got the platoon advantage there, and you get a day off for Mason Wynn to build it in over the course of this 17 games and 17-day stretch. Now, I do wonder if that maybe changes since yesterday was effectively a day off for these guys. I think you could end up seeing maybe Mason Wynn play his way through because they have Monday off. But maybe Sunday becomes that, where he gets the 2 days off in a row again. You know, could see something like that.
You think we put in our getaway day lineup on Sunday?
I think it's very much in play.
Oh, see, that one I would be a little more frustrated by than I would. Last time I got it, now you just had an off day. Like, I don't think there's a reason to put the getaway lineup potentially out there on Sunday.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Cardinals back in action coming up here in just about 30 minutes. Coming up at 12:15, we will give you our thoughts on what the first 35 games of the season mean for the Cardinals and what teams with a similar record at this point of the season have done in recent memory. We'll get into that in just a little bit. Questions and answers coming up next here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. 314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and get them up right now on the Air Comfort Service text line. From the 636, Alex, is there any reason to bet against the Avs winning the Cup at this point?
No, and this is, I hate the division matchups, and I said this all along. It should not be Minnesota or Dallas that were banged up, that had to go the distance in that series to go on to play Colorado, who has sat around and did nothing with their time because they were 4-0. And it's going to sweep this series, or at least probably win in 5 or 6. It's not going to be as competitive. Colorado's going to have an easier path to get to the Stanley Cup final, and then you'll get entertainment. Whereas if you just would have gone 1 through 8, you would have had Minnesota and Colorado probably seeing each other in the Western Conference final, both playing the same amount of readiness versus what this one is.
Okay, let me say this on the front end. I agree with you. They should do it that way. Now, as my retort to that, though, I don't think the games would go any different. Yes, you would be playing that in the Western Conference final instead of it being played in the second round of the playoffs, and maybe there's real value in that. But Colorado in game 1 had Cale Makar get banged up. He missed more than half of that game because of his knee issue that he had when he took that big hit in the game. So they were able to do that despite Cale Makar being banged up in the first game of the season.
Minnesota was without their 2 centermen that were injured in that last game against Dallas.
Sure, but that's what happens in the playoffs, man. That's part of the reality. Is it becomes, are you able to withstand the rigors of a postseason? The other thing, I could just as easily argue a 7-game series prepares you more for that second round series than sweeping whoever it is that you played and not having that kind of a rigorous game against that opponent. Colorado had no issues getting out of the first round. Meanwhile, Minnesota had to fight tooth and nail to be able to get to the second round. And sometimes that also has an impact on those guys were just playing, they're ready to go, they're already ramped up for the second round.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. I don't think that this is because of the way that the things were scheduled. I think Colorado's just better than everybody else in the West. So to answer the question, no, I don't think there's any reason to bet against them right now.
Yeah, I think they're going to be the one. Any of those teams in Vegas and Anaheim, it was always going to be one of the 3 teams from the Central making it from the Western Conference. I wouldn't bet on them winning the Cup, though. I think Carolina is a much better team than the Colorado Avalanche.
314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. From Vizzini, is it more important for the Blues to use a number 1 pick to acquire a player or to trade for a player?
Meaning draft versus trading? Trading to get a guy with your picks versus just drafting Stenberg?
One pick to acquire a player or to trade? I don't know.
I'm assuming what they mean.
I'm assuming with their first pick, is it more valuable for them to make that selection or trade for a
trade to get
player?
a guy now?
Sure.
I would say
Let's go with that.
If you're telling me that it's just at 11, an 11 overall pick or trade for a player, I would say trade for a player. But if you're telling me package all those picks to go get a second overall pick and draft versus trade all of them to get a player now, I think like Doug said, you got to hope that you're getting a guy that's in the right age frame that's going to be there for 6 years, which you might not be, versus a guy that you're drafting is going to be there. And I think that's probably makes more sense for the Blues long term.
From the 314, did you guys find it interesting when Army said he could package picks and or prospects to move up and also mentioned Florida specifically?
Yeah, Florida makes a lot of sense as well. Florida's the one that I don't know how aggressive you get with it because it's 9 versus 11. You do that at the moment that the draft is happening because a player is available for you at 9. You make the trade now to try and get 2 or 5 so you know what player you're going to select.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I didn't read too much into the Florida one. I think he was just using them as kind of a placeholder.
Because they're a cup champion.
And he gets a sense that there's going to be a couple teams that might be interested.
And I had asked specifically, there are a couple of teams toward the top of the draft this year that view themselves as playoff contenders. So he had that already at top of mind.
Yeah.
So you go, Toronto, San Jose, and then you go down further. The next significant playoff contender that you would assume for next year is Florida.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, T-Bone.
No, I do think that it was interesting that and we've talked about it, how he kind of brought up, without being asked, the interest of, hey, yeah, we have interest in trading up. And I did find it interesting. He mentioned dipping into their prospect pool. So it's clear they want to be somewhat aggressive in trying to move up. But as BK said earlier, hey, man, it takes 2 to tango. And I think as we've seen a lot over the last couple of years, there's just not a lot of teams that want to trade out of their spot.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from Dirk Diggler's unit. Guys, with the news that Kyrou had knee surgery after the season, does it change your opinion of his down year at all? It does for me. It doesn't for anybody else.
No, because I don't think the knee injury is as significant as people are making it out to be. I think it was probably something that was bugging him, that he wanted to get cleaned up to make sure he was 100%. I don't think it was limiting the way that he was playing in the season.
Yeah, it doesn't change it for me because I think even if he was compromised, right, and we can have the debate of when this injury occurred, how long was he compromised, the guy's too talented not to be a 20-goal scorer, and that's my thing. And then I say this, and BK made me kind of feel bad for a moment. Then Mike kind of backed me up on it. Mike McKenna, the former NHL goalie. I mean, you're in the lineup, you got to produce. And everybody's banged up in the NHL season at one point or another. So, no, it doesn't change my opinion on his down season at all.
From the 641, can you guys explain why they even had Urias on the roster over Sajasi in the first place? Yeah, they like him defensively, and they think he's a better bat. Mm-hmm. And I would say so far, that's basically followed to be true in the games. Now, Urias has been terrible against right-handed pitching this season, but against lefties, he's hit for some power. He plays well defensively. I don't know how much better defensively he is right now than Gorman. I think that says as much about Gorman's defense so far this season as it does Urias.
I do find it interesting, though, that they put Prieto right away in at third over Gorman at DH. And I don't know if that was just because they want to get Gorman more time off of his feet because of his back issues in the past, or if that was, hey, yeah, we know what the numbers say about Gorman's defense. We still believe Prieto and Urias were better defenders than him in the hot corner.
They've trusted Prieto to be their shortstop at AAA this year, so clearly they see something in him defensively. And all the reports seem to indicate he was fine there. If you think that he's an okay shortstop, he's capable there. He's certainly probably a better defender over at third, I would assume, than what you've seen so far this year from Nolan Gorman as well. All right, 314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. In 15 minutes, we'll look a little bit into the St. Louis Cardinals. What can we learn from other teams that won at least 21 of their first 35 games? That's where the Cardinals find themselves. What did other teams that did that in recent memory accomplish that season? We'll get into that in 15 minutes. But next, does it make sense for the Blues to make a significant trade up in this year's draft? We'll get into the numbers on it next year on 101 ESPN. Alex, it is an interesting conversation to have about moving up in the NHL draft. It's easier said than done, though. I remember the Blues tried to do this a few years ago when they had the 3 first-round picks, and everybody else was like, yeah, nah, that ain't happening. And they ended up sticking and picking, and they got a few pretty good players out of it. They got Stenberg, they got Lindstein, and the prize of it all was Dalibor Dvorsky. Now you look back, and some of the players that went ahead of them, though, little difference here of prospects that you could have added to your system.
You really wanted to be in the top 4 of that draft because Fantilli, Carlson, I'd argue both of them are better than Bedard. Will Smith with San Jose has been really good. And then Leonard was kind of the diamond out of all of those at 8th overall.
So they tried to move up. They weren't able to. So earlier today, we heard from Doug Armstrong, who said, yeah, they would like to move up. They could potentially get aggressive. They've got 3 first-round selections. They also have prospects. They've got players. They can move around if other teams are willing to do so. Yesterday, the San Jose Sharks general manager came out and said, hey, yeah, we love the fact that we moved up in the draft. We're also still open to trading our first-round pick, if we're going to improve our roster. Now, I don't know what that means for them. That could mean they're not looking at other picks. They want players that are ready to come in and play alongside Macklin Celebrini to make them closer to a playoff contender. So if that's the case, I think the Blues do have pieces that could fit into that criteria, but we'll talk about that here in a minute. If they are looking for picks and they want to add more to their chest, if you want to call it that, in the minor league level, and they could get 3 first-round picks that later become assets for them to trade with, well, the Blues could also do that. I was looking into this. Puckpedia has a pick value calculator. I don't know if this resembles what they have internally for the Blues and for other NHL teams, but it's what we have publicly. They say the Blues would need to trade something like 11, 15, and the Colorado pick, plus a little bit more in order to get up to number 2. Is that something you'd be willing to do, Alex, if you're in the Blues shoes?
Absolutely. I don't think you need 3 first-round picks as much as you need 1 really good first-round pick if you're the Blues right now. And just a side note, that 2023 draft where they tried to move up in, let's remember who they were trying to trade with. Chicago, Anaheim, Columbus, San Jose, Montreal. All 5 of those teams were still in their rebuild mode. They were still in that asset accumulation mode. That's not where San Jose is at right now. San Jose has selected top 5, I think, 4 times in the last 3 years, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it's 5 times in the last 3 years. But they've got a lot of top picks that they've already done. They're trying to get closer. And if you're San Jose and you're looking at the Pacific Division right now, it's doable to be the first team in that division next season. So, yeah, I absolutely would trade 3 first-round picks and 1 or 2 of my third-round picks this year's draft, or a future pick if you had to do so. Because I think what you could get at number 2, whether it's Ivar Stenberg, Caleb Malholtra, Chase Reed, whomever you like as a scouting department, those guys either help you this year or next year for sure. Whereas if I'm selecting 11th and 15, maybe help you in 2 years. More than likely 3 years. So all of those picks, and then the 3rd-round pick, Colorado's pick, not even worried about that. 3 to 5 years away. All of those to get a guy who can come in and help you and play in your top 6 right now, yeah, I would absolutely get that aggressive for it.
Are there specific players that you're targeting? Because I think sometimes you think about it theoretically and you're like, yeah, go get the 2nd overall pick. Go get the 5th overall pick. But okay, yes, but for what? What are the Blues targeting if they decide to move up in this scenario?
Mine would be the first one is Stenberg because you need goal scoring on your secondary options. And Stenberg, although there are some that are skeptical of it, I think he has the ability to put up 30 goals and be an 80-point player in the NHL. If the ceiling is William Nylander, I'll take the shot on that. But then the next guy, and this would be where the debate comes in, I would seriously look at Caleb Malholtra.
The center,
who played on the same team as Adam Jiricek in the OHL, and I believe he is committed to play college next year. But you are weakest at the center position in your organization. If you believe Dalibor Dvorsky is a second-line center, then what after that? You don't have anything. So Caleb Malholtra, I think, immediately creates the internal competition of Malholtra and Dvorsky, who fights for that number 2 center spot, and then who drops down to the 3rd. You look 2 years into the future, 3 years into the future. If I've got Thomas, Dvorsky, Malholtra down the middle, that's where I'm feeling pretty good about myself.
All right, now let me go down a different path with you. Let's say 2's not available. San Jose decides, you know what, we're sticking picking. We're going to take a defenseman here. Reed seems to be the guy that everybody believes that they would be most likely to select at number 2 overall if they decide to stay there. And Vancouver says, well, we ain't trading this. We're getting the center. We're taking Malhotra. We're good. So McKenna 1, Reed 2, Malhotra 3. And Chicago says, well, we're not trading either. We got the consensus, maybe second or first best player in this draft by sitting here at 4. And now you get to number 5 overall. You mentioned New York with the Rangers. They're sitting there. They're on the clock. And you've got the potential to trade up to 5. And as we heard earlier, Doug Armstrong said to get into the top 5, I think it's interesting that he said that specifically, it would require us to trade 11 and 15. They think that's basically how the math would work out. So you don't have to add any other assets, and you could still have that late first-round selection as well, probably 32nd overall with the Colorado Avalanche pick that you have. Is there anybody else that you'd be looking at other than McKenna, Reed, Malhotra, or Stenberg? Or at that point, are you just staying and say, you know what, I think the same tier of prospects that I can get at 5, I can get at 11, and in this scenario, I'm having to give up 15 to move up for it?
There's one more guy that I'd be looking at, and this is where I don't know as much about it. This is where the scouting department has to decide, is it worth trading all of that to get this guy? Because it's going to be 2 defensemen. There's no more forwards that I'm taking at that spot. If you want forward, then I'm sticking at 11 and 15, and I'm going to get a defenseman and a forward. But if I want 5, and I think either Carson Karels or Keaton Verhoff, 2 defensemen, one plays the right side, one plays the left side, both are projected to be top pair-esque defensemen. If I feel like those guys fit into the criteria of like, hey, these pieces are going to be great franchise defensemen for us, then yes, I would trade up and I would get Carson Karels. He'd be the one I'd target because he's a left-handed defenseman, and that's probably where you're more deficient because it's Broberg, Lindstein, and then whom? Versus you've got Mayu, you've got Jiricek. Your top 4 is kind of set. That's where I would look at it. But, man, that's where I kind of wonder if it's worth getting that aggressive for. Because the defensemen, although they might be franchise-altering, can I get something close to that in terms of the ceiling at 11? Because you've got 3 other defensemen that could be sitting there for you and 2 forwards that could be sitting there. That would be where I would delegate to the scouting staff and say, like, hey, are these guys worth it? Because if not, let's just stay at 11 and 15.
Mahomes Longbody says, guys, yesterday I thought you said there were only 2 Tier 1 prospects this year. Is it really worth trading away assets to get somebody that is still in that second tier? It's interesting because I think the position changes things here. I think the consensus appears to be 1 or 2 top-tier prospects. Those guys are both wingers. It's Stenberg and Gavin McKenna. Those are the guys that are, everybody agrees, like the most talented players in this draft. But the positional side of things also has to play into this. Defensemen are more valuable in some people's mind, and centers are more valuable in a lot of GM's mind. So that's where you get into Chase Reed, who I think is probably considered to be like the 3rd best prospect right now, Alex, in terms of talent, and he's a right-handed defenseman. So he's big, he's got size.
And there's not a lot, people value right-handed defensemen a lot in the National Hockey League.
They're hard to find.
Yes.
Especially those guys with size, and he has that.
Yeah.
So that's another player that maybe you would throw into that category. Caleb Malhotra is a centerman prospect who has the potential to be, at minimum, top 6 guy. In a worst-case scenario, you're hoping he has the potential to be a top-line guy. You just never know. It's hard to say for sure. So that's where you could get yourself into 4. If you wanted to believe that there are 4 prospects worth really being in that top tier, that's the argument in favor of it, at least based upon the stuff that I've read. 5 is where it seems like, all right, you've convinced yourself on the top 4, now what?
Yeah.
And that's where I think it gets very interesting for the Blues, because I think you could potentially trade into 1 or 2. We'll see, but maybe those are in play. 4, maybe, if you're able to have the right guy. But then at 5, there's such a drop-off that I'm not sure it makes sense anymore to trade up unless you are just absolutely convinced this guy is different. There is a specific tool that we believe in here that the other prospects in this group, maybe the national analysts don't see it this way, but we do. We trust our evaluation. We think this guy is potentially going to be special for us. That's what you've got to believe if you're going to make this kind of a move.
Yeah, this Carson Karels kid that played in the WHL, he's got number 1 potential. So that'd be one that, again, I would look at a scouting department and ask, like, is this seriously what you think could do it? But you're right. Like, I think the only one that I would say without question you're not able to acquire would be Vancouver's. They're not trading that pick, but there's a slight chance that Toronto would. I think Chicago would entertain the idea of it. The problem is it's an in-division team that you'd probably have to overpay for. And are you comfortable doing that?
Can we talk about the Cairo of it all?
I think Cairo would be most likely in terms of Chicago.
I think Cairo would make sense for San Jose. I think Cairo would make sense for Chicago. I think Cairo in some scenarios could make sense for Toronto. Now, there's also the Craig Berube angle on this.
He might not be there very long, though.
Yeah, I don't know if that matters or not.
Yeah, well, and let's consider the John Chayka that they just hired. He is an analytics guy, and analytics would tell you Jordan Cairo was really good this year.
100%.
So they're going to love that kid. So you're right. That's the tough part because I just think they'd value Gavin McKenna more. San Jose is the one that I look at them and I say, okay, well, they've got Chernyshov, who they spent a top 10 pick on, Will Smith, William Eklund, and they've got Tyler Toffoli. That's 4 guys in your top 6 that I would argue they'd probably all value higher than Jordan Cairo. They're most efficient, San Jose, in their defensemen. They need help on defense and then goaltending. You're not trading Joel Hofer. I don't think they'd have any appetite for Jordan Binnington. So then you get to the defensemen. I don't know what their appetite is for Colton Parayko. You're not trading Broberg. And then you've got some younger guys that may not really make that much of a needle mover for them right now.
And if you want to get really into the weeds on this, and we've got another, 2 months to be able to talk about this stuff almost. But this is where it gets into, all right, what are the other packages that are potentially being offered for Jordan Cairo?
Yes.
What are the other packages that are potentially being offered for Colton Parayko? And once you know that, you know what the league values those guys as. And now you can look at it and say, all right, we're getting a first and a third as a potential offering for Jordan Cairo. Okay, well, if he is worth a first and a third, that means I don't have to include the 15th overall pick to move up. I can just include Cairo plus 11 to move up into the top 3. Is that something that is worthwhile for you? Do you think that the upgrade is significant enough from Cairo to the guy that you'd be getting there, plus the cap space that now is available for you, to make that move? Or, here's another piece of this, talk to Ottawa. Talk to Dallas.
Yeah.
What's the situation with those teams right now and some of their top players? Brady Tkachuk, Jason Robertson. What are they looking for? Do they want an NHL-ready player? Do they want a top draft pick? What's the situation there? Because it's also possible, hey, we are trading Cairo plus 11 for 2. And we're not sticking and picking at 2. We're trading 2 plus 15 to go get Brady Tkachuk. Like, there's a lot of moving parts. The Blues have a lot of different pieces they could be playing with here, and they have so many potential offerings that they could be playing in like 5 different markets at once. And so that first move, whatever it becomes prior to July 1st that you see, that does not mean that's the last move. That may be the first in a set of moves that ultimately gets them to whatever this offseason is going to look like. So keep that in mind. If we know anything about Doug Armstrong and hopefully Alexander Steen as well, they're willing to get creative, and that might be the way they can play the board, plus the veteran players market this offseason.
And this is why the scouting staff is so important, and you trust a guy like Tony Feltrin for how much success he has had with guys like Jimmy Snuggerud and Jiricek and Carbonneau. The scouting staff that has been doing this work all year long, they're going to sit down when they have their pro team meetings and look at the front office staff and say, these are the guys you need to acquire. These are the guys I would suggest, if you're going to get aggressive, you go acquire them now. And then that's where they go to work. And then that's where the creativity comes into play. Like, well, where's this thing at? The difficult part with this is you got to wait to find out what all those teams' plans are. Like, you got to talk to Dallas and see, like, what's going on with Robertson, Ottawa with Brady Tkachuk, Seattle with Matty Beniers, I think is a conversation you probably need to have. I go back to Chicago.
What's the plan up in Jersey this offseason?
Exactly.
What's Toronto doing beyond the number 1 overall pick? What's their plan
Columbus,
in general?
I mean, Vancouver, if you want to get crazy with Elias Pettersson and you think that's an option that you could get changes, there's a lot of teams that are going to be trying to make difference makers. Hey,
Utah, you ready to take that next step in your build?
Yeah, especially after getting bounced
like for
in
you?
the first round. I come back to Chicago, though. I really wonder if Jordan Cairo plus picks could get you 4. Because I look at Chicago.
And then you get the guy that drops.
And then you get either Malhotra or Stenberg. You're getting one of them. Now, you don't get
Chase Reed, like, depending on what happens there, right?
But
one of those one of the guys other than Gavin McKenna that you believe is in that top category, you get them.
There's 3 guys, you're going to get the choice of two of them because you're sitting at 4 and, we've already discussed McKenna and Reed, Stenberg. But, I look at Chicago and say, okay, well, all of the guys that they've drafted high are at the NHL level. If they're going to draft Malhotra, well, that's a centerman, but centerman not helping them right away. And if you're Chicago, you need to start taking steps forward. How much do they value veteran presence? They like speed to play with Bedard. Does Kyrou get them there? So does Kyrou 11 and 15. Does St. Louis have an appetite to watch Kyrou go to their division rival and potentially go score 40 goals?
Sure.
If that means you're getting a player that you want that fits into your timeline.
We got 2 different texts, very different takeaways on this from T-Dags. Guys, the Blues are actually in a great spot, and it's really exciting. No doubt. They have the potential to do a lot of different stuff this offseason. I have no idea what they're ultimately going to do, what can get done for them. That depends as much on other teams as it does on the Blues, but it is exciting and interesting.
Yeah.
And that's what we're in the business of here. From the 314, if we traded the second overall, traded to get the second overall pick just to ultimately flip it for Brady Tkachuk, I'm leaving this city. Would you guys rather have next year? If I told you it's a 1-for-1, it won't be, but if it's a 1-for-1, you could either have Brady Tkachuk or whoever you take with the number 2 overall selection.
Let's say I have Stenberg because people want him. I would rather have Brady Tkachuk.
Me too.
I'm getting a guaranteed 30-goal scorer that's 26 years old versus a guy I don't know if he's a 30-goal scorer who's younger. I'm taking the guy that's a guaranteed number for me to slot into my team. So, yeah, without question.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone on BK. In 15 minutes, we'll talk to Chris Kerber about all of this here on 101 ESPN. But next, I did a lot of research last night. I really dug into the weeds. The Cardinals right now have won 21 of their first 35 games. All right, what does that actually mean? What have other teams that were at this point in the season and won as many games as the Cardinals, what did they ultimately accomplish that year? Are there a bunch of teams that just fall off at that point? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So I did a real deep dive last night, boys. The Cardinals were off, and I was like, I need some Cardinals in my life.
Oh,
so I looked up. Have you seen my notes from last night, Alex?
Yeah,
it looks like a crazy man.
You look like Charlie
As
Day.
you tease this, it seems you've
Well, and I can't wait to hear what he's about to say as the Cardinals are down 4-0.
Yeah, Palante's getting shellacked.
This might be
This is
June.
why you don't put Pedro Pais behind the plate with him.
This might be June of
Ivan
last
Herrera
year.
would have never
Yeah,
picked that
that's right.
pitch.
Yeah, true.
He never
True.
would have called that slider down the middle of the plate against Vaughn. Wouldn't have recommended that one there, Pedro. Yeah, that's not great. Okay,
we don't gotta pay
so the
attention to that
Cardinals
the
have
rest of the day.
won 21 of their first 35 games. That's pretty good. I think we would all agree, no matter what the expectations were coming into the season, that's a good start to the season, right, boys?
See,
Amen. Hell yeah, brother.
The last time they won at least 21 of their first 35 games was 2021. Before that, they did so in 2019, 2018, 2015, 2013, and then 2009, 2008, 2006, 2005. In those seasons, they made the playoffs all but 2 seasons. The years that they missed it, they won 88 and 86 games. So we're still a good team, but they missed the playoffs in those 2 years. Let's expand that, because that's pretty good history for the Cardinals when they start out the season the way that they have so far this year. What about the rest of the National League? And what about the rest of the National League since they expanded the wild card in 2012? Settle in, boys. Here we go. 37 of the 40 teams that started as well through the first 35 games as the Cardinals have made it to the playoffs. Or, excuse me, finished above 500. 37
You're
out of the 40.
already confusing me, man.
Okay, let me take 2. You ready? There have been 40 teams that won at least 21 of their first 35 games.
Okay.
Of those 40, 37 of them finished above 500, and 29 of them made it to the postseason.
So above 50% made the postseason.
Talking about roughly 75% of them made it to the playoffs.
Nice.
The teams that missed the playoffs won the following number of games: 81, 83, 83, 81, 86, 84, 82, 88, 66,
Oh, jeez.
82, 86.
That sounds like a Rockies.
Yep.
Was it really? Look at me go.
The 2014 Rockies started the season winning 21 of their first 35 games, won 66 over the course of the entire year.
Ouch. That checks out.
The reason I bring this up, Alex, is because basically if you start out this way, you're finishing above 500. And there's a decent shot you finish with legit chances to make it to the postseason, unless you're named the Rockies and you suck the rest of the way. Like, you're truly horrific. What does that do for your expectations when you see this recent history for the 2026 Cardinals? What does it mean to you?
That they're a playoff team, or at least fighting for a playoff spot. They're not a below 500 team, nor are they a team that bottoms out when the shoe falls. I don't think you're going to be the Colorado Rockies that just win 66 games and now you're talking about just being a bad team still. That would have a lot different beliefs of this squad. But yeah, I mean, what that tells me is, yeah, this season you're talking about a team that will be above 500 and close to a playoff spot, because the National League is going to allow you to be close to a playoff spot. So, which is a positive for this team that I thought was not going to be the case.
Yeah, it makes me think they're going to be in it all year. Now, will they make the playoffs? You know, I think we'll see. But I definitely think that for sure. This guarantees you that you're going to be in this race for the entirety of the year. I mean, it's almost hard not to make the playoffs in the current format if you finish above 500 or right around 500. I mean, look at the Reds last year. They weren't any kind of world beater, and they were able to make the playoffs, like, I think 3 games above 500. Same can be said for that Diamondbacks team that I brought up yesterday that made the playoffs a couple years ago and ended up getting to the World Series. So it makes me believe that they're going to be able to stay in it for a while. You know, the thing that still makes me skeptical of that is their pitching. But if their offense continues to do this, which is hard to do for 6 months, then yeah, I mean, they're going to be right in this and make this a tough conversation on Hein Bloom at the trade deadline.
From Two Pump Chump, yeah, but how many of those teams that missed the playoffs were before they added another wild card team to the mix? About half of them. Since 2022, you've seen the Brewers in 22, the Giants in 22, and then the Cubs in 2024, and then last year, the Mets and the Giants missed the playoffs after starting the way that the Cardinals did. Every one of those teams went at least 500, though. The Giants finished exactly 500 in both 2022 and 2025. I think this offense is better than what the Giants had in those 2 years. And like the Mets are a different thing entirely. They just completely fell apart down the stretch. They had a ton of injuries. That was another thing to add into the mix. So you're looking at, the 2022 Brewers. I think that might be an interesting comparison. Was that the year they traded Josh Hader at the deadline?
Yeah, they were in first place in the division, and they traded him, and then they fell apart, and the Cardinals won the division.
And they won 86 games that year. If the Cardinals win 86 games this season, I think they're going to make it to the playoffs, given the way that the National League is looking so far to start things out. So I think that would still get you in. But that's an interesting team to look at because that might be the way the Cardinals operate this season. It's entirely possible they get to the trade deadline. They're either in first place in the division or close to it, and they're definitely in the playoff mix. And Chaim Bloom looks at it and says, yes, we're in the playoff mix, but we're not a championship contender. Teams are offering us an arm and a leg to get their hands on Riley O'Brien and JoJo Romero and Lars Nootbaar and Dustin May, and we've got to send these pieces off. Otherwise, we're doing ourselves a disservice for whenever we are a contender again. And that's going to be a fascinating discussion to me, man. I find all of this to be really interesting. They've put themselves into a conversation where this might be real. They might actually be something resembling a contender in 2026, which none of us were prepared for coming into the season. We thought they might be better than people expected, but that means like winning 80 games in a really good scenario. Now we're talking about a team that might be better than the Brewers, just flat out might be better than them. And that's going to present some intriguing decisions as we get closer to mid-July.
Now, do with the Cardinals what you did with the Blues and tell me how many of those teams made the playoffs the following year.
Oh, good question. I'd have to go
because
through
that's
that.
what I'd be curious of. Now, a lot of those teams aren't run rebuilds, but I'd be curious how many teams
Cubs made it last year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Cubs would have been
They
one
won
in
the first
2025.
playoff series for an NL Central team since
Rockies
the
didn't, so we can rule that out. It's just because that's the
The
time.
Giants the next year won 79 games, and they've kind of been stuck in mediocrity ever since. The Brewers, I believe, would have made it the following season.
23. I think that's right. I'm not as confident in that.
2023, the Brewers would have made it, and then they got swept in the playoffs. But they won 92 games the following season as well.
Yeah.
And then the Cubs in 2019, 2020 season was a fraud.
It's true. None of us believe in it.
The 2018 Diamondbacks, the next season, they would have ended up missing the playoffs, won 85 games, though.
Yeah.
So, yeah, some of these teams, it signified, hey, they're going to be interesting the next year. 2018 Cardinals did not make it in the next year. They made it to the NLCS.
Well, in 25
that team.
or 85 wins for the Diamondbacks in that division. You put them in any other division, they're probably a playoff team. It's just you're in the division with the Dodgers
Also,
and Padres.
You mentioned the Rockies. 2014, they fell apart.
15, they may have made it.
Oh, no, 2015, they did not. I thought they were.
Come on, man, they're bad.
Because that was when they had Arenado. That's why I kind of thought the same with BK. Because they had that.
It was 17-18 that they got good again.
Okay, I knew they had like a 2-year window where they made it, and then that's when Arenado got all upset, and he's like, "We're not spending any more money after I signed my deal."
I just think that's the sustainability that you're talking about. If you could be the playoff team the next year, it's what we talked about with the Blues. And you guys asked me how much I bought into it, and it's like, well, I think you can compete. I think the Cardinals can still be competitive for a playoff spot next year too.
And I think what makes it interesting for the Cardinals now, I would have no idea. I mean, this is some deep dive research
He'll
stuff
get
we've
there.
been talking about. Well, it's nothing with numbers. It's where were you at with your payroll? How much room did you have to grow? You know, because if we're talking about the Cardinals, they're doing this as they're resetting their book. So in theory, if you believe on what BD3 had told us on opening day and what Chaim has been telling that, hey, when we get back to winning, we want to have payroll close to where it had been in years past. Well, this would seem to signify, well, if this is year one and you're willing to start investing into your payroll, in theory, that should be something where you're able to really continue growing linearly.
I looked at this last night, and I assumed there's going to be a lot of teams that fall out of it. 21 of the first 35. It's a good record, don't get me wrong, but come on. Like, there's probably a few examples of teams that then won 75 games. And the reality is there isn't. The Cardinals would be an outlier if they completely fall out of this thing. So if you believe in their hot start, recent history would suggest there's every reason to do so. And now it becomes real decisions that are in play for Chaim Bloom at this year's deadline. And I think it'll tell us a lot about the direction of the team, how much they're buying into what we've seen so far this year, and how much they value going for a championship as opposed to just getting in, and how much value they view as that having for some of their young players. I think there's value for that. If you get Jordan Walker into a playoff series, man, I think that matters.
But imagine the prospects we get back for Riley O'Brien.
Yeah,
I would. And I would still say trade him.
And I would also add this. Is that prospect still there for you in the offseason or next year at the trade deadline if you end up out of it? The guys that are interesting to me are Dustin May and JoJo Romero, maybe more so than anybody else, because those guys you have to potentially either get rid of or let walk in the offseason for nothing. Riley O'Brien ain't going anywhere. Lars Newbar even still has another year of club control if you really want to bring him back in the offseason. So interesting decisions to be made for sure. Coming up next, Chris Kerber, voice of the Blues here on 101 ESPN.
Hey, Chris Kerber with you here. And look, when you hear me talk about a company, you can trust it because you know that I've used it. It's one of my own rules. Like, if I'm going to help endorse somebody, I'm going to let you know that I've used them, and here's why. You can trust Classic Air Care. The service they come in with is quality. It's knowledgeable techs, and they can get to you when there's a problem. There's not a wait, we can get to you in a week. They've got over 100 vans on the road, and they can typically get to you within 24 hours. Now it's springtime. Get them out there to have them do a maintenance check on your air conditioning unit. It's just $89. That's their May special. For $89, you can have them out there, and they'll make sure that it's running as efficiently as possible and also help you avoid any major breakdowns come the heat, which we're coming, hopefully, here in just a couple of weeks. On top of that, they want to remind you to replace your air filter. You can get those online at their website as well. You can trust them. I trust them for my house. You're going to get the same quality service that gives them a 4.8 Google rating, which is hard-earned because their customers appreciate them, and you can see all those reviews online as well. It's Classic Air Care. Make an appointment today at classicaircare.com.
Tanner Hendrickson here. The Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Cardinals currently in action as they're taking on the Milwaukee Brewers as it's the final game of their two-game set. They trail 4-0 at the end of the first inning. We'll keep you updated on the Cardinals score throughout the day today here on 101 ESPN. And the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber, joins us next here on BK and Ferrario. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an Icon Heating and Air Conditioning dealer.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Happy to go out to the Callier and Thompson hotline to be joined by the voice of the Blues. He's Chris Kerber. I apologize. Still dealing with this cold.
You
joining us here on 101 ESPN.
He's upset that the lottery was rigged last night. I get it, man. It's how it goes, man.
Curbs, what's good, man? Curbs.
You upset him by clearing your voice.
All right, stand by. We'll get Curbs back.
All right, Tanner's going to have to go to work right now. It's fine. He's going to have to call him up.
Well, we'll have Chris Kerber voice the Blues momentarily.
Has to take a break from
ESPN.
podcasting, and we'll get to him.
Do you think Curbs believes that it's rigged?
Yes, 100% he believes it's rigged.
Really?
I don't know. I hope so.
I don't think he does.
Well, he believes, and I think it's pretty obvious, that the Crosby one was rigged.
Really?
Yeah, because they came out of the lockout, and you had the ownership with Mario Lemieux taking over, and
they were supposed to move to Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty mad about that.
Well, they got Crosby, so you should be upset that the lottery was rigged.
No, they even after that,
they were
still going to be moving, and then last minute they were like, "No, we're going to stay in Pittsburgh."
Your city's not cut out for an NHL team, you know?
Yeah, no, you're right. The Blues have that now.
Yeah,
and there's a bunch of Blues fans.
Don't they have a minor league team there too?
Yeah, it's like
it's a juniors, or not a juniors. It's not an AHL team.
It's
an
but it's the next
I think
one.
it's East Coast.
That's correct.
East Coast hockey, which is
I think
weird.
They're affiliated with the Islanders, if I'm not mistaken.
That makes sense.
Last I recall.
Yeah, that would make sense. But yeah, I bet you Curbs believes it's rigged.
Yeah. Curbs is so mad about last night that he said, I actually don't want to talk to you
he's
guys.
like, Alex brought up the conspiracy, and I hate it, and it bothers me still, so I'm going to hang up.
It's like, I know you guys are going to ask me about potentially trading Kyrou to move up. I don't want to talk about that today.
We're not talking about it today. Kyrou will stay.
Kyrou's going to be here. Parayko's going to be here. We ain't talking about any trades today on BK and Ferrario.
Run it back.
Chris Kerber, voice of the Blues, joining us now here on 101 ESPN. Curbs, how you doing, man?
Fellas, I am good. That was a weird audio issue, so sorry about that.
Okay, we've dealt with worse in the past. So, Curbs, the Toronto Maple Leafs get announced last night as the winner of the NHL draft lottery. Was your reaction what Alex's was of, this is rigged? Of course they got it.
Yep. Say it, Curbs.
No, I can justify. I can totally understand. And my actual reaction was, thank goodness it wasn't Chicago or somebody else.
Same, Curbs.
At least, and I'm serious about it. Now, I don't believe that this draft lottery is as straight up as it's portrayed, but I have no proof to the contrary. I am not a conspiracy theorist in general in life. I just like to latch into that one on this one from the original Pittsburgh Penguins Crosby scenario. That said, thank goodness it was Toronto. They had a bad year, much like Tampa did, say, in 2008. This is a team that's put a winning product on the ice. Maybe they haven't had the playoff success, but they had made the playoffs 9 times out of 10 years. And I know they had a first overall pick 10 years ago in Austin Matthews. They've tried, they've made moves. It just hasn't gone well in terms of playoffs. I'm cool with the result. I hated seeing San Jose jump back up to second. I believe this firmly, and I'll argue with Army. I'll argue with anybody in hockey ops on this. Right? If
all right, Kerbs.
If you may not have it should be against the rules to have more than 2 top 5 picks in any 2 or 3 year window, and whether it be 2 top 3 in a 5-year window, however you want to adjust it. To me, that's the part that's got to change, because I believe a team like the St. Louis Blues, the Boston Bruins, the Washington Capitals, I believe that when they found a way to have winning hockey for the better part of 20 years. You know what? At some point, you got to be rewarded without. You could be rewarded without having to do a full teardown like San Jose and the Blackhawks and the Edmonton Oilers and the Buffalo Sabres, and these others have done. So I just think at some point in time, if you're the Chicago Blackhawks, if you're one of those teams, and after 3 straight picks in the top 5, and you haven't figured out how to get any better, you've got a management problem more than you have a hockey problem.
I actually completely agree with Kerber on that one, and it's something Major League Baseball has done to avoid basically the situation that the Sharks just had, where they picked 4th, 1st, and 2nd over the last 3 years, and now once again they're going to be picking 2nd.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. It's just there's something wrong with it. Now the league put something in place. It's just not drastic enough. I think you can only win the lottery to get the first overall pick, I think, twice in a 5-year ban. Yeah. I got to look what that rule up is exactly. So there is a little protection. It's just not enough. I think, one, I like the draft lottery part, and this is why I think it's great that Toronto is the one that gets it, rather than one of those other teams. I just think at some point in time, you got to put a little more pressure on these teams. I mean, Buffalo missed the playoffs for 14 years in a row. Are you kidding me? I mean, you want to talk about problems. For the Edmonton Oilers, at one point in time had a similar thing, where they picked first 4 out of 5 years. First, right? And this isn't a woe is me thing. I just think that at some point in time, teams have to be better, and this is where I applaud the Bill Guerins, the Jim Nills, the Doug Armstrongs. Frankly, what LA did, LA went down, they kept back up, they got their couple high picks, they made the playoffs 4 years in a row. I applaud those teams and those management teams for being smart enough to have it figured out.
So with that being said, Curbs, we had Doug on at 11:15 this morning, and we talked just a little bit about the appetite of moving up, and he sounded pretty determined to see if they could use these picks to try and get into the top 5. For how this fell last night with teams like the Sharks and like the Blackhawks and even the New York Rangers, do you see a path to potentially packaging your picks together and getting into that top 5?
Well, the biggest thing is, that Doug Armstrong said in his presser, and I apologize, fellas, I didn't hear the interview earlier.
It's okay. You can check it out on the podcast page after the show today at 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app. Also on YouTube at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Go ahead, Kerbs.
That's a pro.
There you go, Brandon. Don't miss an opportunity. That's how we do it. So, listen, number one, you could have all the appetite in the world, but you've got to have a partner that's willing to trade out of it. If you go back, and again, I told you guys before, I'd done this with the help of NHL stats. I believe it's only one time since the salary cap came into play in 05-06 that a team has traded after the season, the scenario we're in right now, into the top 5. And that would have been the Toronto Maple Leafs when they picked up Luke Schenn. All right? So, that said, if you look at the fact that the teams that are picking again high, let's just say higher than the Blues, the San Jose Sharks, the Chicago Blackhawks, the Florida Panthers, right? Obviously, we're not going to see Toronto do anything with that pick but pick it, okay? But you look at the teams that are there, and you look at the talent that are on those teams. You look at the assets the St. Louis Blues have, being the only team with 2 top 15 picks, and they've got 3 first-round picks overall. If there is a scenario that moves the needle to allow you to do it and move up this year, this feels more likely than most scenarios we've seen recently. You typically don't see it, but you're talking about an 11th and a 15th and you can mix in a player or a prospect, you've got the assets that could speed the process up. And, guys, that's what we were just talking about with Chicago and those other. At some point in time, the Columbus Blue Jackets are another phenomenal example of this. At some point in time, you end up as a team with a bunch of high draft picks, and you wait for them to come along. If you don't move them, like the Minnesota Wild did with Bume, right, with Rossi and with some picks to get Hughes, if you don't do it, you don't advance the process. And look at all the teams that are still playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Look at how many players on their rosters have been acquired by a trade. There's a method to the madness here. And so, yeah, I do see a path where you could see the Blues move up this year versus other years.
So that's where it gets really interesting, Kerbs, is like you mentioned the other path that they could take, which is adding all of these assets together and then going and making a package deal for a really good, proven NHL player. We were talking about this earlier today. It feels like half of the league is at a crossroads this offseason. I mean, you mentioned Toronto. I have no idea what their plan is this offseason. They just were given a gimme, basically, with the number 1 overall selection, but we'll see what they do. You look at Tampa. They've now lost in the first round 4 consecutive seasons. We'll see what they're going to be up to. New Jersey sure seems like they're interested in making some changes to their roster. Dallas has a cap crunch, and they've got Jason Robertson to sign to a long-term deal. I have to imagine Utah is going to be looking to make upgrades to potentially improve their roster. LA, same thing. We'll see what they decide to do. They're at a crossroads. Like, all of these teams feel like they're in the midst of making some significant changes. I didn't even mention Ottawa, who God only knows what's going to happen there this offseason. Would you be more interested in the Blues moving up using these assets, or to potentially go out and get a star-level player that is already in the NHL, Kerbs?
I think I'm going okay. If you could find a star-level player that's proven and ready to go, I'm on for that one.
Would Jason Robertson qualify for that for you?
Yes. Jason Robertson qualifies in there.
Would Brady Tkachuk?
Brady Tkachuk. Yep. Yes, obviously he does. He qualifies in there, okay? That said, I think the more likely scenario is moving up and improving the process of where you're at if you have somebody in the top 5 and 6. And look, I don't want to sit here and say, woe is me, based on the Blues draft pick position, because when you look at a Matt Boldy was picked 12th, and Anjay Kopitar, I believe, was an 11th or 12th pick. A Dustin Brown was a 13th pick, right? I mean, and I think you have to have full faith. You have to have full faith in what the Blues drafting and scouting department has done with their draft picks. I'd say, honestly, in the last 20 years, I think it's been outstanding. So that said, if you can pull off something and really get that high end one that you're real sure about, I think that feels like the more route of the two. I'm Brandon. I'm up for either one of those scenarios. It feels more likely to me that the more likely to happen of the two would be move up in the draft. And the reason I say this is because a lot of those teams that you mentioned, like let's take the San Jose Sharks just to play this one out, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Are the San Jose Sharks better off with it's a pie in the sky, 1 overall pick, right? But with as close as they were, if you could get, say, a Jordan Kyrou and a defenseman off the St. Louis Blues roster, let's just even say it's a Tucker or a Kessel, right? Maybe it's a Lindstein, maybe it's a Theo Lindstein.
Who will be joining us coming up at 1:30 today here on BK and Ferrario.
What a tease.
Jeez, man, it's like we're all on one page here. This is awesome.
Goodness.
So, right? So, but let's say you could. Let's say you could do that. And are you better off if you got a Kyrou and a prospect, or a Kyrou and another defenseman ready to play in the NHL than you are with another high draft pick? And I can make the case that you are. So that's why I just think that those scenarios feel more likely if they are to play out than any others for the Blues.
Yeah, I totally get that, and we're going to have plenty of time to talk about all of this, Kerbs, but then that becomes a question of, like, if you're the Blues, does it make more sense to include Kyrou in a deal to move up, Parayko in a deal to move up, or does it make more sense if you're making those moves and you're open to trading those guys to potentially just accumulate assets for them, and then you just use the picks to move up, or picks and prospects. Like there's so many different ways that this offseason could go for the Blues, and now you look at the way that the top of the board is set up, and you have a little bit more certainty on, okay, who are the teams that make the most sense? Where could you get to? It's going to be a fascinating next month to 6 weeks in terms of what the Blues are going to be able to do with some of these assets.
It's going to be a fascinating one. We obviously know that this hockey department will exhaust all of its opportunities. We saw that with the offer sheets. We know that they will be aggressive. They've proven to have the smarts. I like the fact that Alex Steen is in the position that he's in to put his touch on it, combined with Doug's history and knowledge and aggressiveness. I am not in favor, based on what we saw with Lindstein. I believe that this Blues team is going to be much more capable and ready to compete. If you're keeping a Colton Parayko on the roster, I look at him now as your previous Jay Bolmeister, right? And how critically important that was. So to me, I don't look at him as a movable piece, but who knows where that could go. To me, the Jordan Kyrou one is the one that really becomes intriguing, even though he controls his own destiny there. Carbonneau's going to go to Springfield, start his pro career. I think he can find forwards more than you can find defensemen. So, this is what makes it so good is the Blues are also coming from a point where they have assets. Now, what the assets are and how it all plays out, the only people that really are going to know that are ones in the room. But they have the assets to at least play in that sandbox. And look, at some point in time, more teams in the NHL are just going to have to take the Las Vegas aggressive approach to stay in a window or create a window. And I think that's the era you're living in sports, and I think it's something that needs to be dissected more and how to be successul at it.
Hey, Curbs, appreciate the time as always, man. We'll talk with you again next week. We'll certainly continue to break this thing down.
All right, fellas, have a great week, and I'll make sure I go to the podcast, the YouTube page, and everything else for anything else I missed, fellas.
You better believe it. Appreciate you, Curbs.
All right, see you guys.
Take it easy. That's Chris Kerber, voice of the Blues here on 101 ESPN. Alex, before we get to the junk drawer on the other side, I saw Frank Saravalli just put out his way too early top 5 mock draft. You ready for it?
Sure. I didn't see this.
Number 1 overall. Any guesses?
Gavin McKenna.
Nope. Ivar Stenberg.
That makes sense. People are starting to say, like, oh, well, Matt Sundin is Swedish, and he, like Alex Steen, likes Swedish players. I call BS. It's going to be McKenna.
Number 2. Any guesses?
Well, I would say...
It's McKenna.
No, I don't think it's McKenna because it's San Jose. I would say San Jose. It's Chase Reed.
Nope. Keaton Verhoff. Number 3. Any guesses? Vancouver.
This one will be McKenna.
Yep, Gavin McKenna. Number
Vancouver.
4, the Chicago Blackhawks are up.
Oh, no, Matt Holtra.
Nope.
Is it Stenberg?
Nope.
So this would be Chase Reed.
He
Didn't
went
we
number
just
1.
say Stenberg was drafted?
No.
Yeah.
Stenberg went 1.
Yeah.
Remember?
Oh, duh. Okay, so...
Chase Reed.
Yeah, Chase Reed.
And then number 5 in this scenario is the New York Rangers.
This would be Malhotra.
Carson Carrolls.
Wow, so Malhotra
That's
drops
where
to
you
6.
could potentially bump up to 6. Get yourself Malhotra, get the center that you're looking for. He could be somebody that immediately improves your depth
but
at
6
that
is
position.
Calgary. You'd have to move to 5.
Okay, cool.
Because
Great.
Calgary's not trading their pick, in my opinion.
And that's where you get 11 and 15, you bump up to 5.
Mm-hmm.
You basically need somebody to be a surprise in the top 4. Like Verhoff going number 2, that's the kind of thing that you would see come up on the screen. And you'd be like, hot damn, Blues, let's go. Let's get on the phone with the Rangers at number 5 because one of, in this scenario, McKenna, Reed, or Malhotra is going to drop to 5. That's what you're rooting for as a Blues fan.
In all reality, if Toronto takes Stenberg and the Blues value Gavin McKenna, if they value that as the number 1 pick, you get on the phone immediately if McKenna drops to 2 and say, okay, San Jose, you're not taking him. You want defenseman. What do we need to do to get this deal done?
Coming up in 10 minutes, it sure sounds like college football's headed to a 2014 playoff. You guys excited about that? We'll get into it coming up in just a little bit. Junk Drawer next here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T1 on BK, Dolphins are smart. Did you know that, Alex?
You talking normal
Dolphins
or Miami? Because Miami Dolphins are not smart.
That's fair. How about this? This is from a report that came out yesterday. Dolphins deliberately get high on pufferfish.
Nice.
The nerve toxins, they can carefully chew them, and then they pass them around together. How about that?
I wonder why this story popped up on BK's feed.
I don't know. It's something about my
Probably sandwiched between two other
my
special
algorithm.
stories.
Yeah, I guess your algorithms. This, it's weird. My algorithms, like, kid projects at home and, different things to do on date
We live
nights.
different lives.
Yours
What can
comes
you
up with
say?
dolphins puffing and passing.
What are you doing for Mother's Day this year?
Well, I can't tell. It's a surprise, but I'm building my wife something.
Are you?
Yeah, she listens to the show, so I can't actually say it. But yeah, I am legitimately, it's a hobby that I'm starting to pick up. Where I'm trying to I'm turning into Drew Bannister, where I'm buying wood and I'm building things. Last year I bought her.
Our buddy Brad Barnes did that.
Last year I built her a picnic table that's in our backyard, like a legitimate picnic table that the girls use.
Brad Barnes, old producer for the Fast Lane, for our wedding, he gave us and you know how wedding gifts are, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of. Thank you, everybody that gave us a wedding gift. A lot of the time, it's stuff that
I don't know if
you'll use for the next
cash.
6 months, but then realistically, is this really a long-term thing that is going to be good? Maybe not. But he gave us a cutting board, and it's a legit wood cutting board. I use that thing all the time. It's great.
When we bought our second house, the one we live in now, our realtor bought us one of those, and we use it to this day.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Man.
So, but yeah, no, I'd like to. I did this with the picnic table last year, and I was like, it turned out pretty good. So now I found a different project that I'm building for her, and once we reveal it on Sunday, I'll be able to post it on social media, and you can see what it is.
From the 314, I always knew dolphins know how to party.
Got to swim with dolphins. Did you ever get to do that?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
we went to Miami and did it down there.
We did it in Hawaii on our honeymoon. That was still one of the coolest experiences of my life.
T-Bone, you ever swam with the dolphins?
No,
Did you
I've
swim
not.
with sharks?
No.
Like in the cage? No, I don't think there's any. You're in a cage, so what are you going to say? Ooh, I was in the water next to a shark.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
You think a lion's roar is life-changing, so.
Correct. Have you ever done any paragliding?
No.
Or
I'm terrified of heights,
anything like
so
that?
no way.
Hell no.
I did paragliding. We jumped off the paragliding thing in Colorado whenever I was younger.
Yeah,
Did
no,
that
that's
with
a
my dad.
terrible idea, and I would never do that.
want me to be honest?
For
I just-
somebody who's paranoid about planes, you're just paragliding off of rocks? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah,
It was a
what's up with
mountain.
that?
It was the side of a mountain.
Were you acting
That's
like a
less
dolphin? Were
safe
you
than
a
a plane.
dolphin prior to you paragliding?
Maybe. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll play a game of More Likely to Happen. You give us two scenarios, we'll tell you which one's more likely. Theo Lindstein joins us coming up at 1:30. But next, sure sounds like we're heading to a 24-team playoff. Is that the right call for college football? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up in about 5 minutes, we'll get into more likely to happen. 314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. If you guys have two scenarios, go ahead and get them in on the Air Comfort Service text line. So Yahoo Sports had this earlier today. Ross Dellinger, man, this guy's got sources everywhere right now. It's crazy. He's got all of the news when it comes to college football, and he's got this. The AFCA, American Football Coaches Association, voted last week to recommend college football implement a 24-team playoff and the elimination of league championship games, Alex. Now, people that are on the board include Brent Venables, Clark Lee, Brett Lashley, Joey McGuire of Texas Tech, Pat Fitzgerald of Michigan State, and T-Bone, your guy, Brett Bielema at Illinois.
How does it feel that your guy wants more teams?
Disappointing, but he wouldn't make a 2014 playoff this year with that roster.
Damn, dog.
They are right now at a 12-team playoff. They talked about going to either a 16 or a 24-team playoff, the latter of which is supported by the Big Ten. The 16-team model is supported by the SEC. But the coaches now have said, 24 teams is probably where we would like to go. Do you guys like this idea? Are you in favor of it, or are you strongly opposed to it? How do you feel about the possibility of a 24-team playoff, Alex?
I'm not strongly opposed against it, but I'm not strongly opposed for it, if that makes sense. It's not a good sports take, but I'm kind of in the middle. I think it's dumb that everybody is starting to get in when it comes to these tournaments. But on the flip side of it, I can complain about that all I want, but every time that they've added more teams to it, I feel like it's just as entertaining. When they expanded it this past time, it was entertaining. You had more teams involved, which created better conversation and, frankly, created more competitive games. So as much as I don't like the idea of 24 teams getting in, man, we don't have to sit here and complain about the AP poll rankings in terms of who's getting in versus who's not. And you're going to get a lot more enjoyable playoff atmosphere. So I'm kind of in the middle of this thing.
I really hate it.
I know you would, buddy.
I don't want to see expansion, and I think it's twofold. One, again, it continues to devalue the regular season, which is what made college football special, was all those big games that you would have. And I would admit, I don't think it's taken away as much as I thought for the 12-team playoff. I do think 24 really would. Because now, though, I get the argument from the 12-team playoff of, hey, now we're having these debates about these teams that are in that 10, 11, kind of 12, 13, 14 range when it comes to the AP poll. Now we want to have that conversation about teams that aren't even in the AP poll, right? We want to have a conversation surrounding, I'm looking at the Big Ten, for example, schools like Iowa, Washington, and Illinois. I get it. For their perspective, that's good. But is it really much better for college football for us to have that conversation? My answer would be no, right? You should be talking about the top-tier programs that earn their way into that top 12 conversation. And it's not like it's out of reach for a school like Missouri, right? I mean, we've talked about it. They've had their opportunities to potentially get there. Illinois had their opportunity this year if they would have taken care of business. So I'm against it. I think when we start having these conversations, it's kind of like expanding the NCAA tournament. Do I really want to watch those teams that are now going to make this first round of the NCAA tournament? No, and I don't think these teams should be in the college football playoff.
The following teams would have been in the playoff last year with 24 teams, with the way that they're talking about, which would be the top 24 teams basically in the college football playoff rankings. These teams would have gotten in. Vandy, Utah, USC, Virginia, Arizona, Michigan, Tulane, Houston, Georgia Tech, Iowa, North Texas. We didn't need those teams, man. We don't need those teams. 16 is more than enough. If you want to talk about last year, hey, the cutoff would have been USC or Utah. All right, I could at least understand that. Vandy was there was a case to be made for Vandy to be in the playoff last year. Whether you agreed with it or not, there was a legitimate case to be made that was a playoff caliber team. They didn't get in, but you could have made it for them. Utah could have made the case. USC, it would have been flimsy, but at least I could have listened to it. Anybody beyond that, I would have been like, come on, man. You could have done more in the regular season to be able to get in. You didn't earn it. So 24 teams, if they get there, I will watch it. I will consume it like crazy. I will enjoy it. I do agree with T-Bone. I've pushed back against it previously, but I will agree with you here. If you can get in with 4 losses, and Iowa potentially could have last year, that's where you start to devalue the regular season a little bit.
You already got 2 guaranteed wins on your schedule with your non-con schedule.
Well, this could potentially change some of that, because now maybe you enter a scenario where you're required to play like 11 FBS opponents. I don't know how that works, but they could potentially change some of that stuff as well. And they were talking about in this scenario, you would get rid of a bye week too to be able to compress the schedule a little bit more. So there's some of that there, but I don't know, man. This is too much for me. I think 16 is the right number.
Well,
if you're going to expand, I think 16 is the number. I've always felt 8 was the number to get to.
Well, you better get used to it because 24 is going to be 26, and then it's essentially going to get to like 30 and then 32.
I mean,
Once
you let the genie out of the bottle and you start thinking of all the other money you can make, like it just never goes back.
Call
right?
it junkyard January.
I mean, college basketball's not done expanding the tournament. Like, let's be honest, it's going to grow even more.
Yeah.
It's going to be not just March Madness; it's March and April Madness moving forward.
So the way they're talking about it would be 6 automatic qualifiers, so all of the conference champions would get in. Based upon the regular season, there is no more conference championship game.
Now, that I can get behind for whatever the playoff format is.
In this scenario, the teams ranked 1 to 8 would have a first round bye. And then 9 to 24 would play in that first round on campus. So it'd be an on-campus game for the first round. That would be the quote-unquote extra round of the college football playoff that they would add in. And last year, just as an example, this would have been, now this isn't exact, but kind of some based upon the college football playoff rankings, it would have been like Alabama versus North Texas, Notre Dame versus Iowa, BYU versus Georgia Tech, Miami versus Houston, and then some of the other matchups would have included like Utah, USC, Vandy, Virginia, Arizona versus Texas, and so on. I just don't think you need that. I would rather see something like USC versus Oregon in the first round, Ole Miss versus Utah, Vandy versus Texas A&M. Those, I think, are better matchups. I think there were some of those where I don't need to see those teams play again. I don't think even their fans were. Iowa fans last year, did they feel like they needed to see their team play another week?
No. Can we be honest? Did Virginia?
No.
And then Virginia made the ACC title game and lost to 5-loss Duke or something like that. Like,
There comes a certain point in time where I don't feel like we need to see some of these teams anymore.
I agree. I would even agree with Illinois. I mean, they were in that would have been in that conversation as a four. I'm an Illinois fan. I'd love to see them make the playoff. I'd like to see them earn a playoff spot and not have one just gift wrapped to them.
I will say this. Somebody on the text line brings this up. I'm okay with it if it eliminates the college football conference championship weekend and some bowl games go along with it. That's the thing.
That's what you're getting rid of.
You'd be getting rid of conference championship games, which are completely meaningless, more or less, right now. And you're getting rid of some of the bowl games that T-Bone readily acknowledges. I don't care about any of that stuff either. So instead of playing the, Independence Bowl, you get one of these games that I just mentioned there where you're watching, maybe it's Alabama versus North Texas and Notre Dame versus Iowa. And instead of that being in a random nothing burger of a bowl game, they get to play real meaningful games in the playoff. I guess that's the case for it. I just personally don't feel like you need it. I know what Stelter would say. You'll watch it, you'll like it, and we'll move on. And I think he's probably right. Coming up next, more likely to happen here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line for more likely to happen. You give us two scenarios. We'll tell you which one is more likely here on 101 ESPN. All right, Alex, let's start out with this. More likely to happen. The Cardinals trade Riley O'Brien, or they trade for a starter with more control than just the remainder of this season at the deadline.
I'll say it's more likely they trade Riley O'Brien. I know he's got a lot of control, but I think he might be one of the guys that teams really want on their team because of that control, and maybe a team pays a little bit more. Maybe you package him together with somebody else to make the better deal for you, but I'm going to be on this path all season long, regardless of what they look like. Stick to the plan, and if the plan is bring in as many assets as possible, if Riley O'Brien's going to do that, I'll trade the guy away.
Yeah, I think it would be more likely they trade O'Brien. I think when you're talking about trading for starters that have control, that starts to get probably too expensive for what the Cardinals will be looking for at the trade deadline if they are buyers. Rentals, I mean, you saw it last year with Merrill Kelly. Merrill Kelly's a pretty good starter. He, went to Texas for nothing. Those are kind of the arms I think they're going to be looking at if they're quote-unquote buyers at the deadline.
I think it's more likely they trade Riley O'Brien as well. I think a lot of Cardinals fans would be pretty upset if that was the case. All right, Alex, what do you got for us?
More likely to happen, boys. Real simple. The top 5 in this NHL draft stays intact, or teams move out of the top 5?
Stays intact. I think it's always more likely it stays intact.
That Luke Shen trade that Kerb's referenced, it was a 7th overall pick in that year's draft, a 2nd and a 3rd round draft pick in that year's draft that they traded away to move up 2 spots. That was only 1, though, and you've got 3 first-round picks and a 3rd round pick that you could work with.
Yeah, I would say that it stays intact. I know we're having the conversations. We haven't seen a lot of trades happen in the last couple of years in the NHL draft, let alone just the top 5. There haven't been a ton of moves in the first round, period. So I would lean towards it stays intact. And until I see something happen, I will believe it. Because there'll be a lot of smoke around those picks. I'll wait to see if it actually goes through.
Call me the ultimate optimist. Call me reading through the Blues glasses. But I'll say it's more likely that somebody moves into that top 5 pick. Because I think one of those teams has more of an appetite to move to get NHL players now versus draft somebody that doesn't help you for a couple of years.
Guys, more likely to happen. We see the St. Louis Blues lock up Jimmy Snuggerud to a 7-year deal, or we see the Cardinals lock up J.J. Weatherholt during the All-Star break.
I think it's Snuggerud.
This offseason you set for Snuggerud?
Mm-hmm. When he becomes eligible for his extension.
I'll say it's...
I don't think the Cardinals are extending J.J. this year.
And I don't think they're extending Snuggerud this year either. And I guess more likely would be Snuggerud because of the core and the ease of it, but... I'm skeptical they approach Snuggerud. I think they want to see what a 2nd year looks like so that they can have a better idea of what to pay him.
I'm skeptical as well, but I'm with BK. I don't think the Cardinals are going to extend Weatherholt. If I said that for Walker, would it change your answer? Replace Weatherholt with Walker?
Yeah.
I think that becomes more interesting.
That'd be fun.
I would say Walker.
Yeah.
That'd be terrifying, but it'd be a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's fine, man. You're in a rebuild.
I do think there's a scenario where you get to the end of the year, and that has to be a serious conversation.
Yeah.
Because he can price himself out of what you're talking about, and he's further along into the ARB process where you won't get his actual prime years. This may be, now you want to get really crazy here, this may be as bad as it gets for Walker.
Whoa,
he might get better from here. That's at least in play.
Or this may be as good as it gets for Walker.
I'm not talking about the numbers, but the performance of what he's been. He should get better from here. Mental, the approach,
60
physical,
home runs every year incoming.
Sheer size and strength and physicality, all of that stuff, generally speaking, gets better in the 25 to 28 range.
I was going to say the scary part is man strength doesn't kick in until about 25.
Yeah.
So this dude still has more man strength to get to.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for more likely to happen. You give us 2 scenarios. We'll tell you which one is more likely. Theo Lindstein coming up in 5 minutes here on BK and Ferrario. From the 314, more likely the Cardinals draft a franchise-altering player at 13 or the Blues get one at 11. I don't know enough about this year's draft for baseball. It does seem as though people think it's a good one, but I'll go with the Blues at 11 just because it seems like it's extremely deep.
Yeah, and I'll say the Blues, too, because I think their scouting staff does a really good job of finding really strong players later in the draft, and now you got an 11th overall pick.
Yeah, I'll go Blues as well. But it's more just, I'm kind of a big, I don't really know a ton yet on this draft class for baseball.
Baseball's always hard, too.
From the 314, more likely to happen, the Blues trade Benner in 15 to Florida for the number 9 pick, or they trade up to number 2 overall.
I'll say 2 overall. I wouldn't trade Benner for the 9 pick.
You wouldn't?
I wouldn't trade Benner in 15 for 9. No, I think you can get a player. I think you could get a player at 9 that you could get at 11. And I'd rather have Bennington on this team next year.
But then you could have the number 9 and the number 11.
If it was just Benner for number 9, I'd do that. But I'm not going to do
that.
I'm not going to do Benner in 15 for 9. Maybe Benner in Colorado's pick for 9, I'd consider. But I'm not going to move 15 for 9.
Man, Benner doesn't have that kind of value across the league right now. Goalies don't. I'd
be
probably
shocked
do this.
if you could get a first-round pick. That's why I would do it if
I
it were on the table. I don't think it's going to be.
Because you're telling me in this scenario, I get 2 of those players in that tier that you're talking about. What if you could do like Benner in 15 for 9 and Kyrou in 11 for number 3 or something like that?
Oh, well, now we're talking at that spot.
I mean,
that's the scenario to where I'd have to know, like, that's also the possibility. I think just
even if you can't do the latter part, I think I would really consider this.
I don't know if it makes you better by trading Benner in 15 for 9 because I don't
Maybe not for right now, but I don't think it really limits you that much because I think Benner's the number 2 going into next season. I think Hofer is your guy now, and I could go sign a guy for $3 million in the offseason.
Yeah.
Maybe he's 80% of Benner, but now I've got a much better prospect than I was expecting.
He's 80% of Benner.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'm
100% Benner one very good.
And I also don't think you're getting a guy for $3 million in the offseason that could be a backup for you. You're going to be overpaying for guys in the free agent market because it's bad.
For one, then.
I think with 11 and 15, I can get the equivalent with 2 players in those spots that I could get for 9. Like, I think 15, I could still find a guy that's going to give me what 9 can be at 15. And then I'm drafting 11 and 15.
Disagree. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. Coming up next,
your premise, sir.
Theo Lindstein, Springfield Thunderbirds and St. Louis Blues defenseman, joins us here on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with the Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Cardinals currently in action as they're taking on the Milwaukee Brewers as they're wrapping up their 2-game set with Milwaukee. They trail 4-0 in the top of the 5th inning. Andre Plante is on the mound for St. Louis. We'll keep you updated on the score throughout the day today here on 101 ESPN. And coming up next year on BK and Ferrario, St. Louis Blues defenseman Theo Lindstein joins the show. This Sports Update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, a Daikin heating and air conditioning dealer.
Alongside Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley. Happy to go out to the Collier and Thompson hotline. Appreciate Theo Lindstein, St. Louis Blues and Springfield Thunderbirds defenseman, joining us here on the show today as they got a big win last night, Alex, in overtime. The Springfield Thunderbirds up now 2-1 in their series against the Providence Bruins. Theo, appreciate the time, man. How's it felt to go back down to the AHL, get this experience in a playoff race for the Thunderbirds?
I mean, it's been awesome. We have a great group down here, and it's just for me and Otto to come down and play our game and have some fun down here. So it's been awesome so far.
Theo, an entertaining season for you to say the least. I mean, the Thunderbirds started off rough. Steve Ott comes down, you go on that run, and I have to imagine a little surprise when you got the call that you were headed up to the Blues, played for him, and then go back with Steve Ott. Have you been able to sit back yet and just kind of go through what this season has been for you?
No, I don't know. It's been a roller coaster year. We had a tough start there, like you said. Then Otter came in, and we had a great run there in Springfield, and then I got called up and had a great time up there, and it was fun playing my first NHL games. And so yeah, I'm just excited to be back down here and help the team to win. It's been a good start for us here in the playoffs.
Theo, now that you had that opportunity at the NHL level, what did you learn up here that you've taken with you in the AHL run that you're on right now?
Playing NHL, it's a dream come true. And I think I'm just like the way I play my game up there. I think I'm just gonna keep doing that down here and try to help my team and my teammates and be myself and just play my game.
Theo, how beneficial was it for you to just get a taste of the pace at the NHL level? Because we talked with Ott earlier this week, who said, the American Hockey League is crazy just in terms of the style that they play. It's a little bit of chaos on the ice. But just for development purposes, to see what the pace is like at the NHL level.
Yeah, like you said, the pace is a bit different up there. And, you're playing against the best pace in the world. And, everyone is a little bit smarter and a little bit bigger and stronger too. So I would say that's the biggest thing. And you said like you said, it's a little bit more chaos now in the AHL, but you got to be smart and keep your head up out there and play the game fast. I think that's a big thing. So I'm just gonna try to do that and hopefully get some success here.
Theo Lindstein joining us here on 101 ESPN. Theo, Alex mentioned it. We had your coach, Steve Ott, on with us earlier this week leading into this series against Providence. What has it been like playing for him this year as a head coach in the AHL level?
It's been awesome. I got to know him at the camp last summer, and he's a great guy and a great coach too, and then he showed how he is as a head coach too now when he came down to us, and he's been awesome, and he's been helping me and all the other guys too down here, and we've been sticking together and being a really good group down here. And of course we've been changing small details in the game, and it's a game of details out there, and he's been helping with that, and yeah, it's been awesome so far.
Theo, you and I had talked about this a little bit during the season, and I just asked you in terms of looking around and seeing what the Blues have in terms of their youth, and you've got some of younger guys that are going to be coming up at some point. I know Jiricek and Carbonneau are going to join you for the Thunderbirds rest of this postseason run. Does that add more to that excitement level for you when you see what the Blues have in their system and the experience and the talent that they're bringing?
Yeah, I mean, of course. We have a good young players down here now in Springfield, and to add Jiricek and Carbonneau now to the team is huge for us. So, yeah, like I said before, we're excited, and hopefully we can step up here and help the team to get a victory here tomorrow.
I haven't seen what the line rushes or anything looked like from today's practice, Theo, but did you get any opportunity to play alongside Adam Jiricek?
Not yet. We had a little bit of day off today and more of a treatment day. So we'll see how the lineup's going to look to tomorrow and go from there.
For this series and this playoffs in general, Theo, how much does that add in terms of just this type of experience for you to see this level of atmosphere in terms of playoff hockey and getting this experience at this time of the year?
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. You know, you play hockey for those type of games. You want to play in the playoffs in the end of the season, and it was awesome to be back in the Thunderdome last night. And yeah, I mean, the fans has been awesome, and they've been with us the whole year, even if it's been a roller coaster year for the team. But you know, it's huge, and we can't wait to get back tomorrow and play in front of our fans.
People will be able to hear that right here on 101 ESPN tomorrow night. Thunderbirds versus the Providence Bruins. Game 4 pregame coverage tomorrow right here on 101 ESPN beginning at 5:50. Puck drop for that one tomorrow night at 6. Theo, it's been a blast to be able to watch you guys go on this run in the postseason. Hope it's able to continue tomorrow night. We wish you nothing but the best. Thanks so much for hopping on with us today, Theo.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Theo.
That's Theo Lindstein, Blues defenseman and now Springfield Thunderbirds defenseman for this playoff run, joining us here on 101 ESPN. Appreciate his time in doing so.
Yeah, this is, I mean, I was talking about this, which we'll have a new episode of the podcast out later today. But, you know, a lot of people say, like, well, what does it matter if they make the playoffs or not in the American Hockey League? The AHL is nothing like the NHL. In terms of pace, you're right. But, you know, I look at the Hershey Bears, who are the American Hockey League affiliate for the Washington Capitals.
What you know about the Hershey Bears,
I know
Alex?
a lot about the Hershey Bears. Also Hershey, Pennsylvania, where apparently chocolate was made. But anyway, the Hershey Bears...
Not a big Hershey guy, personally.
No, I'm not either. I'm not that fan of that type. I don't like chocolate in general,
Dark
which is
chocolate,
a weird thing. Yeah,
much better than milk chocolate.
I need some type of...
You feel that way?
I need some type of nuts in my
I like
chocolate.
dark chocolate, but it's not better than milk chocolate.
Milk chocolate's kind of trash.
You're trash for saying that. Milk chocolate is so much better than dark
White chocolate is the worst of it all.
Now you're really trash because that's the goat of all of them.
I wouldn't call it the goat either.
No, I would take white
dark
chocolate
is a definitive one. Then milk chocolate is it's like 3 tiers below, and then white chocolate can just be thrown in the trash.
Dark chocolate is like the health benefits. So you're totally a health benefit from the dark chocolate.
Better.
No,
it's better.
It's just, you got a terrible palate then if that's what you think.
Okay. Agree to disagree.
Well, we know that.
Yeah,
you also think they shouldn't trade Benner in 15 to go up to 9.
To get Cam Talbot, which you're arguing with somebody on the text line over. So I vehemently reject your opinion on that.
It doesn't have to be Cam Talbot, but that's one option that they could potentially go after.
The options
Stuart Skinner would be another.
The options are bountiful in this free agency that you're going to pay $4 million for.
Probably going to suck next year, but hey,
backup goalie kind of sucked this year.
The production did.
Can I get to my damn point about the Hershey Bears?
So you were talking about Hershey.
It doesn't really matter as much anymore.
Don't matter.
They don't.
I agree
but
with the
if you look at the Capitals, a lot of the guys that they're putting into the NHL level now, the Hershey Bears have won 2 of the previous 3 trophies in the American Hockey League. That playoff experience is valuable, and if you could get that for Jiricek, Carbonneau, Lindstein, Stenberg, and a couple of others, you're going to be in a good spot developmentally. Let's go back to talk about BK's dumb trade proposal for a goaltender.
Listen, I think 15-9 or 15-11 for number 9. Let me
15-11 for 9.
Timeout.
Okay.
The Mucinex is getting to me.
Somebody's been a dolphin with those pufferfish lately.
Go back to the podcast if you want to check out what Alex is referring to there.
Call back.
Jordan Bennington plus the 15th overall pick for number 9 overall, I think is a pretty reasonable trade. If you go back earlier today, we talked to Doug Armstrong. He mentioned how they have the trade value charts for the NHL draft. Well, the one that's publicly available, that suggests that you would be valuing Jordan Binnington as roughly the 30th overall selection. I think that's about how NHL teams would probably value Jordan Binnington. As a late first-round pick is kind of what you would expect to get in return for Binner. And if I could have him in a package like this to be able to go up and get another one of those defensemen, another one of those forwards on top of the 11th overall selection where I'm getting one of them, yeah, I think that's a value play that I would potentially do this offseason. I don't think Binner is going to fit into your long-term plans. I think he has 1 year left here in St. Louis. I think that's it. So you're really talking about what is the value of Jordan Binnington to you next year, and is that more valuable than the gap between the player that you could get at 9 and the player that you could get at 15? To me, I think that's more valuable. I think that player that you could acquire for this scenario is more valuable.
I vehemently disagree.
That's fair.
It comes down to, do you think they're making the playoffs next year?
It's not about playoffs for me.
For the playoffs?
It's not about playoffs for me. It's more about development for your guys. And I think it's going to be important to have another goalie.
In terms of that development?
I think what changes is you have a goaltender that keeps you in hockey games. And you can say he was bad. He was bad in the first half, but his second half numbers were really good.
They're fine. He was fine.
A 920 save percentage. I'd take that. And you're going to need
some of that was about the team play.
Regardless, you're going to need a goalie that can make those saves for you when you've got Jiricek and Carbonneau on the ice making mistakes. And I think developmentally, I'd rather have that than a goaltender that's going to probably give up a ton throughout the season for you. And you're going to have to overwork Joel Hofer in that sense.
But you're willing to trade Parayko in a deal to move up?
To number 2? Yeah, because I think the number 2 overall pick is going to help you right away and be a part of your long-term future.
Okay. I would just say that I think the gap, based upon the reports out there, between the player you can get at 9 and the player that you can get at number 15 might be one guy gets here in 3 years, the other guy gets here in, like, not this upcoming year, but 1 year down the road. And I think that's a pretty significant difference.
I think with this scouting team, 9 and 15, you could find close to the same ceiling at 15 than you could at 9. If we're talking top 7, I'd have a different opinion on it. But I think number 9, you could find that at 15.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK.
A lot of numbers we're throwing out there.
Well, I vehemently disagree.
9, 15, 7, top 7, 15, 9. What about 32?
I just gave you the Powerball numbers, so go ahead and check those out.
Well, if your luck's anything like the Blues, we're not winning.
Very true. But maybe my luck's like San Jose.
Speaking of not winning, the Cardinals are not winning right now. They are down 5-0. There was another run
T-bone
scored
there.
in the moment that I was not
Check the score, man.
Page's let a wild pitch go by.
Oh.
I can kind of describe it for you.
So
Page's on one knee. Palante throws a pitch. It bounces, and instead of going down to both knees and blocking it, tried to stab it. Instead, it went doink off his head.
Ivan Herrera could have probably stopped that one.
Actually, no. He grades worse than him blocking.
I understand what the grades say. I don't care.
I think a lot of wild pitches have gotten past Pedro Pages this season.
They have.
Versus Ivan Herrera.
Yeah, I do think that is something that has been noticeable. It was more noticeable early in the season. I feel like he's been better at that lately, but this could be a scenario where, like, that is one of the unintended consequences of putting him behind the plate today. But that being said, I don't think so far Milwaukee has a single stolen base, do they? No. So they have had one runner picked off. They have not. It was by Palante, though. They have not had anybody run today.
Terrible
and that was the goal.
running.
That was the goal, is you don't have these guys running wild on you once they get on. It's the
8th wild pitch that Pedro Pages has seen this season.
I guess we'll celebrate that while we're down 5.
Yeah. Well, find little things.
You're going to need the offense to do more than get one hit so far.
Yeah.
That's a big part of the story today. Every bit as much as Andre Palante.
Well, they are going up against an elite pitcher for the Milwaukee Brewers.
Well, he's out of the game now.
He looked like he was 15 years old
going into the game for the Brewers. Coming up next, we'll hit the rewind here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. If you guys missed anything from the show, check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all sponsored by
Shaver Door Company.
Hey, it's been a fun show today. We had Doug Armstrong on the show talking about the St. Louis Blues. Also talked to Chris Kerber, Theo Lindstein as well. You can find all of those conversations on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app. Also on YouTube at youtube.com/101ESPNSTL, where you can also find soon the latest edition of the Last Minute Blues podcast. Going to be a tough task for you to be able to outperform the latest edition of the Redbird Report, Alex. But what can people expect when they find it over on our YouTube page?
So we talk a little bit about the draft being rigged, as you would imagine, but more so we talk about if the Blues have the arsenal to move up in the draft, whether it's San Jose or a couple of other teams. We talked about the Dylan Holloway extension and how sweet of a deal that was for the Blues, and then also Carbonneau and Juracek getting the Thunderbirds opportunities. So
you can check that out on the YouTube page, youtube.com/101ESPNSTL. We will have a new edition of the Redbird Report for you tomorrow afternoon. We're recording that tomorrow morning, so be sure to check that tomorrow morning. The other way to do it, if you just want the audio version of the Last Minute Blues podcast or the Redbird Report, download and subscribe to the BK and Ferrario podcast feed. You'll get both of those sent to you right there. That'll be the easiest way. It immediately comes to your phone the moment that it is put out. So subscribe to the podcast feed and then download those whenever you have the opportunity to do so. All right, Cardinals right now trailing against the Milwaukee Brewers. It is a 5-0 game against the Brewers. Alex, did today's game so far change anything about the way that you feel about the team and how positive it's been so far?
Yeah, trash, man. I told you they can't beat the Brewers, just like I pointed out a couple of days ago. No, this doesn't do anything for you. It's Palante on the mound, which I kind of assume Palante is one of those guys that I don't know what it's going to look like when he's out there. It's a day that your offense doesn't get the job done, which that has been a very rare occasion for the Cardinals, that if a bad game happens, the next game typically looks better. So they have not strung together 3, 4, or 5 games where their offense can't come up with hits or runs. So this is just a blip on the radar for me.
I'll tell you this. I'm pretty annoyed by the Sproat cat. He looked good today.
He looked like
what
he was.
The hell?
He looked younger than Tanner.
Pitcher.
Well, he's 25.
He looked younger than it.
He throws 97, 98.
Yeah, me too.
His closest comparisons based on velo and movement are Brian Wu, Zach Wheeler, and Paul Skeens.
Why does this surprise you?
I guess it does. He's been bad so far this year, so that's part of why it surprises me.
You know, in Milwaukee, the pitchers just grow on trees.
Quinn Priester, it doesn't matter who they got. They'll find somebody and they'll turn him into Zach Wheeler.
Yeah, it's super annoying. I don't like that.
You know what? It's a different era in St. Louis now. You're going to start doing that soon.
Player hit the game. No.
Yeah,
no, that's the saying. Why are you surprised by it?
I don't know why I even said it, to be honest.
I'm not sure either. All right, Alex, to get out of here today, last thing, NHL Draft Lottery. We gave our full extended thoughts earlier today, but the Blues are selecting 11 and 15. They're locked in with those 2 picks in the top 15. Toronto and San Jose get the top 2 selections in this year's draft. They both moved up. What did we learn yesterday in the NHL draft, both big picture-wise and also what it means for the Blues?
Big picture, I just said it. It's rigged. But for the St. Louis Blues, it's the second best case scenario you could have gotten from this. Best case was winning the lottery to get the first or second overall pick. But not moving down in the draft and having teams like San Jose, Chicago, Rangers, all being in the top 5 that I think have an appetite to trade out of that if you can make the right deal. That is a really good spot for the Blues to be in. And you have 2 picks in the top 15, which that's some valuable commodity to have if you're Doug Armstrong and his staff to go into this draft. So I'll be fascinated to see what these teams and the conversations are over the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, I think San Jose moving up is the thing that really stood out, because that's the team that it feels like, man, they're ready to start pushing. And you're one of the teams that has legit NHL-ready assets to be able to go help them if they decide they're interested in moving down. Their GM coming out afterwards and saying, like, hey, yeah, we're still open to the possibility of trading out of that pick. That's going to be the spot that I think everybody has circled as a possibility to move out of the top 5 for the first time since the Luke Shen draft. It's been a while.
It's crazy
since we've seen this kind of movement. All right. We will continue to keep you apprised with anything as it comes with the St. Louis Blues. Tomorrow, we are going to be joined by Zimmerman from the St. Louis Blues, talking a little bit about the business side of the operations there. We will also be joined by a prospect guru to get his thoughts on, hey, how big is the gap between, say, number 9 and number 15 in this year's
I hate to break it to you, he's going to tell you not as much as you'd think.
We'll get into that with him tomorrow. For Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. The Fast Lane is next here on 101 ESPN.